In a grand, pillar-lined hall, a divine revelation ceremony reaches its climax. A robed official stands before Kaido Felbach, a brilliant light signifying the bestowal of a new skill. The official makes his announcement. The skill bestowed upon Kaido is revealed to be alarm clock. Kaido's expression freezes in disbelief and shock. Later, his younger brother, Cleo, lounges with a smug air. He asks Kaido why he is sighing, then confidently declares that they should make a triumphant return to the Felbach domain. He laughs condescendingly, reminding Kaido that both of them have now obtained their skills, his tone dripping with superiority. The memory of his father's reaction stings. The head of the house had declared the skill useless. Kaido recalls staring at his own hand, where the symbol for alarm clock, a skill considered a complete failure, had manifested. In stark contrast, his father, Lord Felbach, had praised his other sons. He proudly stated that Alphonse Felbach was bestowed with bountiful wind, and that Cleo's skill, fountain of wealth, was a blessing that brought prosperity to barren lands, the finest possible skill for a lord. His father's furious voice had then turned on him. Kaido, eldest son of House Felbach, he had roared, what in the world is that skill of yours? Kaido could only flinch in response. The tirade continued. Lord Felbach condemned him as a defective failure, questioning how a mere alarm clock could ever enrich their territory. With finality, he announced his decision. The lordship would not be entrusted to an incompetent, but would instead pass to the second son, Cleo. Carrying a single suitcase, Kaido faced his father's ultimate judgment. I hereby banish you from this land. The words echoed as a carriage waited to carry him into exile. He turned away from his home, his expression one of quiet resignation as he walked toward an unknown future. He arrives at the edge of a vast, frozen wasteland. Before him stretches the territory of Argo, a desolate expanse of snow and jagged peaks, his new domain and place of exile. Carrying his single suitcase, he makes his way along a treacherous, rocky cliffside, the ground barren beneath his feet. Pausing to survey the bleak landscape, he reflects that the reality of this place is even worse than the rumors had suggested. He recalls the official document in his hand, its seal prominent. The order stated he was to relocate as the new lord for the restoration of Argo. He scoffs internally, realizing it was merely a pretext for his banishment. Despite the grim reality, a flicker of resolve ignites within him. He decides that since it has come to this, he will simply have to do his best here as the land's new lord. Though he says this, his gaze sweeps over skeletal remains and withered trees that the barren ground. With a cape bearing a crest now draped over his shoulder, he strides forward with purpose. His journey through the wasteland leads him to a solitary, arched structure. He recognizes it as a shrine, though it is clearly in a state of disrepair. Inside, he finds what he presumes must be the shrine of the local land god, a stone statue of a winged figure. He observes that it is completely worn out by time and neglect. Even so, he bows his head respectfully. He asks the statue's permission to borrow a corner of the shrine for just one night, wondering aloud if this place and its deity were simply forgotten or if they had been deliberately abandoned. With a final glance at the silent, eroded figure, he sets down his suitcase and begins to unpack, preparing to make a space for himself within the forgotten sanctuary. He drifts into an uneasy sleep on the cold stone floor. Under the light of the full moon, a vision of the winged woman from the statue appears, her long hair obscuring her face as she wishes him a good night. The vision, or perhaps the sheer discomfort, causes him to jolt awake with a startled gasp, finding himself sprawled on the hard ground. Morning arrives, but brings no relief. As he brushes his teeth outside the shrine, he grimaces, thinking to himself that this is the worst awakening he has ever experienced in his life. He feels awful. His vision is blurry and his head is foggy. He wonders if it's because of the stone bed that prevented him from sleeping despite his exhaustion, or if the emotional weight of his banishment is simply exhausting his heart more than he had realized. As he stands there, drained and miserable, something suddenly activates within him. The sensation washes over him, and his eyes, once heavy with fatigue, flutter open with a new and startling clarity. He cries out in shock as a wave of revitalizing energy surges through his entire being, dispelling all weariness in a brilliant flash. The feeling is incredible. He realizes he's never woken up feeling so refreshed. A new skill has manifested, one that allows him to greet the morning feeling completely restored, no matter how terrible the environment. He can hardly believe it. With this newfound power, he feels a surge of determination, ready to face the unpleasant reality of his exile with a refreshed mind. Just as he steels himself, however, the entire shrine begins to shake violently. He stumbles, crying out in alarm as he realizes this is no mere earthquake. The vibration feels different, unnatural. From the heart of the collapsing shrine, a brilliant light erupted. Within it, an angelic figure with vast, feathered wings hovered, her hands clasped and her eyes gently closed. Fragments of the shattered stone structure rained down around her. As the dust began to clear, Kaido stared up in disbelief. A girl had emerged from inside the stone statue, and her eyes, now open, met his. The winged girl was the first to speak, her voice soft as she asked if he was the one who had woken her. Stunned, Kaido could only stammer in confusion. She then asked for his identity, and he introduced himself as Kaido. In turn, she revealed her name, Sierra. He cautiously asked if it was all right to call her Sierra. She gave a gentle nod, replying that she didn't mind and would call him Kaido in return. Now that introductions were made, he explained that he had many questions. He recounted being assigned as the Lord of Argo, or rather, cast aside, the day before, followed by the morning's earthquake that collapsed the shrine and led to her appearance. With the summary complete, he asked her directly just who she was. A divine light emanated from her as she answered. She was an angel, the Archangel Sierra. The revelation struck Kaido with the force of a physical blow, leaving him speechless. She continued, explaining that her descent to this world had occurred several hundred years ago. The immense span of time only deepened Kaido's astonishment. The realization struck him. She wasn't just an angel, but one of the mythological figures from the old tales. He was face to face with a being of legend. Her explanation concluded with a simple, yet profound statement. She had been sealed in this place. The word sealed echoed in Kaido's mind as he understood the gravity of the situation. He was not just witnessing history. He was interacting with a living continuation of mythology itself. As he stood in stunned silence, Sierra began to explain what she had experienced. She recalled that while sealed away, she had heard a sound. The sound, she remembered from the depths of her slumber, was not jarring but unexpectedly pleasant. It felt as though this sound was sweeping away the fog that had clouded her mind for ages. Before she could even process it, she had awakened. He listened intently, the pieces beginning to click into place. He asked for confirmation. She heard a sound and simply woke up. A suspicion began to dawn on him. His eyes widened as the realization struck him. He exclaimed the name of the skill he had used just moments before. Alarm clock. Her expression softened as she looked at him. She confirmed that Kaido was indeed the one who had woken her. The pleasant, mind-clearing noise she had heard was his doing. The full weight of the situation crashed down on Kaido. His alarm clock skill, a power everyone had dismissed as a useless dud, was capable of waking a sealed archangel. It was a power that defied all common sense. He covered his face, finally accepting the truth. He was the one who had awakened Sierra. His hand clenched into a tight fist, a silent testament to the resolve forming within him. Resting on the ground, he looked up at her and confessed his own vulnerability. He admitted his anxiety about being banished and alone in this strange land. But meeting her, even accidentally, had changed things. He accepted that he was the one who broke her seal, and with that came a sense of responsibility. She gazed down at him, a profound sense of connection forming. She understood his loneliness, relating it to her own state as a being with no memories and no place in this new world. The fact that he had treated her not as a divine being, but simply as himself, Kaido, brought her a feeling of pure happiness. Kaido looks at Sierra with a gentle expression, explaining his desire to stay by her side, at least until she regains her memories. He admits that having her with him would be a great help. His words spark an intense reaction in Sierra. Her eyes widen as she realizes she can stay with Kaido. With sudden, explosive joy, she declares that she will stay, shouting "Me too," so forcefully that Kaido is knocked off his feet in surprise. He watches her, processing the outburst. Seeing her earnest, hopeful face, he understands her conviction. Sierra quietly reaffirms her desire to stay, and Kaido accepts her decision. A moment of shared understanding passes between them. Kaido, now smiling, makes a proposition. "Let's live here." Sierra's face lights up, and she happily agrees. The two sit together amidst the ruins, a silent pact formed. As they share this quiet moment, an undead creature with a skeletal visage watches them from behind a broken wall. Their peace is shattered as more skeletal figures emerge from the rubble. Sierra turns to Kaido, asking if they should defeat them. Without hesitation, Kaido springs to his feet, moving to shield her and shouting for her to get behind him, insisting he will protect her. Before he can act, Sierra steps in front of him. With a calm expression, she raises a hand as magical energy gathers around it. She speaks the name of her power, Lightning Ray. A blinding flash of immense power erupts from her palm, engulfing the area before them in pure, destructive energy. The light fades to reveal utter devastation. The skeletal creatures are vaporized, and the very ground they stood on is shattered into fragments by the force of the blast. From the edge of a massive, newly formed crater, Kaido stares in disbelief at the destruction. He realizes that from now on, he will be the one relying on Sierra's incredible power for help. He walked beside Sierra, his mind racing to process their new reality. He reasoned that whether it was simply living here or dealing with monsters, their most reliable approach would be to follow the example of the other residents. Their path was suddenly blocked by Helmet and a group of other residents. The man's expression was hard as he demanded to know what business they had in their territory. Taken aback, Kaido quickly tried to de-escalate, stating that if monsters were the problem, he would defeat them. He thanked them, adding that he was counting on them. Helmet, however, remained tense and suspicious. Helmet, the apparent leader of the local inhabitants, confronts Kaido. He states that he is acting on behalf of the residents, demanding to know if Kaido has business within their territory. His words refer to a startling group, a collection of sentient undead, including ghouls and a skeleton, who watch the exchange. Among them, Sierra stands silently, looking small and out of place. Kaido stares in disbelief, realizing with a shock that these are the residents Helmet mentioned. He cries out Sierra's name, alarmed that she is standing so close to the undead creatures. As the tension mounts, Sierra responds. A gentle, divine power emanates from her as she spreads her wings, her long hair flowing in an unseen wind, pacifying the immediate area. The display of divine power seems to have satisfied Helmet, whose face breaks into a wide, appreciative grin. Taking this as his cue, Kaido formally introduces himself as Kaido Fellbach. Helmet's expression shifts to one of recognition. He has heard rumors of the young master of House Fellbach and notes the family crest on Kaido's attire. Helmet acknowledges the introduction, remarking that Kaido at least made it to their land safely. He casually explains that undead pop up everywhere in the region, so people are attacked all the time. Beside Kaido, Sierra listens with a slightly puzzled expression. His casual remark is cut short when one of the undead residents rushes towards them, shouting for Helmet. When Helmet asks what happened, the man stammers before yelling that something has happened to the undead. The man frantically explains what he saw, screaming that the undead nest was blown away as if it exploded. The group looks on in shock at the massive, smoking crater left behind. He bows deeply, apologizing profusely for the destruction. Helmet and the other undead man look on, bewildered, with Helmet asking why he is the one apologizing. Kaido, still bowed, confirms that Sierra was responsible. Helmet considers this, reasoning that even though they were attacked first, Sierra still destroyed part of their territory to protect Kaido. He questions if anyone would even believe their story about an angel being the cause, leaving the other residents speechless with shock. After a moment, he decides to move on, formally introducing himself as Helmet, the one in charge of the settlement in Argo. Later, inside a dwelling, Helmet thanks Kaido, clarifying that the place Sierra destroyed was a lich nest. He asks Kaido if he was the one who took care of it, to which Kaido reacts with surprise. He quickly clarifies that he has no intention of complaining and, in fact, feels nothing but gratitude. He explains that if he had known how dangerous it was, he wouldn't have led them to the settlement. Helmet denies this assessment, a realization dawning on him. He deduces that Kaido didn't just wander into their lands by chance as he holds up a sealed letter. His eyes narrow as he recognizes the seal of House Fellbach. Getting to the main topic, Kaido presents the document, confirming he arrived because of the relocation order within. He explains that he has been appointed the new Lord of Argo. He expresses his desire to improve the settlement, but also acknowledges their position, stating he understands if they can't accept an inexperienced stranger suddenly replacing their leader. Despite this, Kaido's expression fills with resolve. He clenches his fist, vowing that he will work hard so that, someday, everyone will acknowledge him. His earnest plea hangs in the air, but he falters, realizing how his words might sound. Helmet's face is cast in shadow as he coldly retorts that there is nothing to acknowledge. He clenches his fist, his initial rejection giving way to a surprising explanation. He states that all previous lords were arrogant and quickly fled the land. Kaido, however, not only dealt with dangerous monsters, but, more importantly, possesses the genuine motivation to act as a lord. This, Helmet declares, is the most significant reason for his change of heart. In response to this unexpected acceptance, Kaido bows his head low. He offers a sincere apology on behalf of all the previous lords who abandoned their responsibilities. His apology strikes a chord with Helmet, who notes with astonishment that Kaido would bow his head even to them, a sign of genuine care. He can feel the sense of responsibility and duty emanating from the young man. Extending a hand, Helmet declares that if they are to entrust themselves to anyone, he would rather it be a person like Kaido. Before he can fully process the gesture, Kaido is suddenly hoisted into the air, flipped upside down in a rough but celebratory manner by the undead residents. Back on his feet, he firmly shakes Helmet's hand. The undead leader lets out a booming laugh, though Kaido wryly adds that he is no longer a noble. His admission sent a shockwave through the assembled undead. They realize with a collective shout that their new lord was exiled, making him not so different from them after all. This newfound common ground prompts Helmet and another resident to ask if Kaido possesses a skill. The young lord confirms that he does, hesitantly identifying it as alarm clock. Helmet remarks that the name alarm clock doesn't sound particularly powerful. He presses further, demanding to know how Kaido managed to obliterate the entire monster nest. Internally, Kaido considers that with this newfound trust, they might finally believe him if he tells them about the angel. Deciding on his course of action, he announces that before explaining, he has an introduction to make. He calls out the name Sierra. From a nearby bed, the archangel lifts her head. As Sierra is revealed, the other resident quietly asks Helmet if the girl truly seems as incredible as Kaido implies. Helmet, stroking his chin thoughtfully, recalls reading that she was sealed away somewhere after a great battle, but expresses his surprise to find that her prison was here, in Argo, all along. He watched as the archangel began to stir, her eyes fluttering open. He couldn't help but remark on her adorable, sleepy expression. As she awoke, her gaze fell upon the gaunt face of an undead man leaning over her. Sierra let out a piercing scream. The man, startled, quickly apologized for waking her. The revelation sent Helmet reeling to the ground. He struggled to process the information, asking if Kaido's alarm clock skill was truly what released the Archangel Sierra from her seal. Kaido simply confirmed that he was correct. As if to prove his point, Sierra clung to Kaido, declaring him her master and affirming that he was the one who woke her. The news stunned Helmet and the other resident. Not only was their new lord motivated, but he also had an archangel serving him. Their shock quickly transformed into fervent excitement. Helmet and the undead man roared with renewed hope, convinced that their new lord Kaido was about to achieve something incredible. Their enthusiasm was infectious, igniting the entire crowd. Cheers erupted for Lady Sierra, the great archangel, and their new lord Kaido. Overwhelmed by the sudden adoration, Sierra buried her face in Kaido's chest, calling his name repeatedly. Kaido looked down, relieved that they were both safe. He looked up from the archangel to the cheering crowd. A quiet realization dawned on him. The people of Argo had finally accepted them. With their place in the settlement secured, the true challenge began. Argo was home to about 100 residents, and, as expected, their most critical problems were the lack of water and food. The territory's environment explained their plight. The southern side, where Helmet and the others lived, was a vast, barren basin. Meanwhile, the northern side offered a stark, unseen contrast. He learned that to the north lay a forest region, rich in resources. It was a place where, with enough stamina, people could spend over half a day traveling to gather water and food. Every day, some of the residents made this arduous journey. He wondered why they didn't simply make this area their new home, but he quickly understood there was a reason they couldn't. A menacing presence with glowing eyes watched from the deep shadows of the woods as he gathered water. The reason was the savage beast monsters that roamed the forest. A massive, horned creature charged him, its maw wide in a ferocious roar. Helmet had already explained the grim logic to him. Not all 100 residents were capable of fighting. While a comfortable place for humans to live was also a paradise for monsters, the wasteland where only the undead roamed was considered the better option compared to a life of constant danger. As Kaido faced this challenge, Sierra's expression was one of quiet determination. After a grueling hunt, Kaido lay exhausted on the ground. Helmet praised his good work, acknowledging how difficult getting food had been. Another resident noted that they should eat quickly, as the meat must have already started to spoil on the long journey back. Suddenly, Sierra's voice called his name. She appeared before the exhausted Kaido, holding a massive, steaming piece of meat. She announced that she had hunted and cooked it herself. He looked up, stunned, and managed to thank her, realizing just how dependable she truly was. With a bright smile, Sierra informed him that she had brought another one too. She dropped a second, equally large portion of cooked meat beside him, and the two sat together, the immediate crisis of hunger effortlessly resolved by her power. The scene shifts abruptly. On the cracked, barren earth lies a young girl, unconscious. Her face, smudged with dirt, is contorted in distress, with sweat beading on her skin. She is dressed in what appears to be a nun's habit. The sudden discovery prompts a shocked, stammered thought from an unseen observer. Eh? A girl? After carrying the body, they found back to the settlement. Kaido and Helmet lay it gently on the ground. They are both startled to discover it is a young girl. The girl lets out a pained groan, her face beaded with sweat as she lies unconscious, clearly in severe distress. As she suffers, Sierra explains that her magic is purely for offense and asks if she should simply burn the human. Horrified, Kaido quickly interjects, realizing with alarm that he is the only one present who can possibly save her. They move the girl to a bed inside one of the clean houses. Helmet thanks Kaido for the use of the space and asks if there is anything else he can do to help. Kaido immediately requests as many clean cloths as possible and some water to wash the wound. Helmet assures him he will get them right away. Sierra peers at the dark, corrupted-looking wound on the girl's abdomen and asks Kaido if he can use healing magic. He grimly replies that he cannot perform a healing that advanced. He admits that the most he can do is provide first aid, feeling grateful for the basic medicine he learned back in Fellbach. Despite his limitations, he resolves to give it everything he has and begins tending to her. After some time, Kaido sits by the bedside, observing the patient. He muses that he's gotten quite good at using his alarm clock skill. Yet Sierra, standing right next to him, is completely unaffected by it. He looks back at the girl, noting there is still no sign of her waking up. He stretches his stiff back with a slight groan of discomfort, 2 bowls of dark, soiled water sitting nearby as evidence of his work. He had watched over the girl all night, his worry growing. He knew she couldn't remain in this unconscious state forever. A thought then occurred to him. The same skill that had awakened a sealed angel, his alarm clock, might be able to rouse her from this deep slumber. He paused, reconsidering. After using it a few times, he had realized his alarm clock skill wasn't a true recovery ability. While it guaranteed a refreshed awakening, it didn't actually remove physical fatigue. Therefore, if her body was currently sleeping to restore its strength, forcibly waking her would be counterproductive. he decided against it. As breakfast time arrived, he turned his attention to her immediate needs instead, beginning to change the bandages on her wound. In that moment, her eyelids fluttered open. Kaido looked up, his expression shifting from focused concern to surprised relief. She was awake. He greeted her gently, expressing his desire to hear her story, but insisting that nourishment should come first. He offered her breakfast. The girl seemed disoriented, recalling only that she had been fighting monsters in the forest. She then formally thanked him for saving her life and introduced herself as Liza Einhorn. Kaido listened, understanding now how she had ended up in the village of Argo. Liza elaborated, explaining that she was an adventurer who had entered the forest with her companions to gather materials before they were attacked by a ferocious monster. As she spoke, Kaido noticed an adventurer's tag among her belongings, confirming her story. The confirmation, however, led to a grim thought. If her party had been wiped out, something should have been left behind. He glanced at Sierra, who affirmed that they had only found Liza. Just then, Liza looked at them with hopeful eyes, asking if they had seen her companions. The truth of her situation was horrifying. She had been used as an injured decoy and abandoned by her companions. Kaido reeled back, his face a mask of disbelief as he let out a cry of shock. He processed the grim reality, realizing there had been no trust established within her party. Liza, however, seemed resigned, explaining that it was only their second expedition together and that such an outcome couldn't be helped. Kaido, still troubled, looked at her and asked why she would continue as an adventurer if she had experienced such betrayals so many times. Her answer was simple and stark, catching him by surprise. She did it to put food on the table, explaining that she was an orphan. She continued, clarifying that she had no home to return to. For an orphan like her, being an adventurer was the only way to survive, as completing quests guaranteed payment from the client. Liza recounted her past, stating she was taken in by a church as a child but had to leave at age 14, living on her own ever since. Hearing this, Kaido acknowledged that Argo was currently a terrible environment, one of the worst in the Empire. This realization ignited a fire within him. Clenching his fist as a sigil glowed in his palm, he declared that as the Lord, he would do his best to make this place better. He passionately vowed to improve Argo to the point where its citizens, regardless of their background or number, would never have to struggle for survival again. Sierra and Liza listened, captivated by his conviction. Turning his attention back to Liza, Kaido made a heartfelt offer. He asked if she would be willing to make this place her new home. The question stunned her, and tears immediately welled in her eyes before she broke down sobbing. Kaido panicked, waving his hands and apologizing, thinking he had upset her. But Liza, wiping her eyes, quickly corrected him. She explained they were tears of joy and, with a radiant, tear-streaked smile, declared that she would live here and be in his care. She clutches a small, circular emblem, her eyes closed in gratitude. She offers a quiet thank you to the angel she believes guided her to this place, a gentle smile gracing her lips as she gazes at the symbol in her hand. Hearing this, Sierra looks perplexed and clarifies that she was not the one who guided her. Kaido, observing the exchange, realizes his oversight. He had forgotten to explain to Liza that Sierra is, in fact, an angel. The revelation strikes Liza with awe. She stammers that it's true, then quickly apologizes to Lady Archangel Sierra, explaining that her earlier casualness was a result of overwhelming happiness and that she meant no disrespect. Her awe quickly transforms into zealous admiration. Declaring herself a newcomer who doesn't know the ropes, she eagerly implores Great Senior Sierra to teach her everything. As he watches the two interact, Kaido reflects on the intimidating appearance of Argo's other residents. He feels a sense of relief, concluding that if Liza can get along with Sierra, she will likely manage just fine. With this thought, he decides he must inform everyone else about their new arrival, and sets off to find Helmet. He finds Helmet already waiting for him, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. Before Kaido can speak, Helmet announces that he overheard the conversation, startling the young lord. With a knowing smirk, Helmet correctly deduces Kaido's intention, to organize a welcome party to help little Liza integrate into the community. A surprised Kaido confirms this was his exact plan and asks how he knew, to which Helmet replies that it was obvious, a testament to his lord's character. Helmet then calls out, revealing he's already gathered the citizens of Argo. A crowd of undead and other beings emerges, expressing their excitement over a new arrival, particularly a human woman. Peeking from behind Sierra, Liza is awestruck by the sheer number of people. Helmet stands proudly, his competitive spirit noted as he was the second person to meet Lord Kaido in this domain. Following the welcome party for Liza, Kaido awakens in a state of confusion. He finds himself in bed, shirtless, with Sierra nestled against one side and Liza on the other, both sleeping soundly. He feels trapped, unable to move or fully process the bewildering situation. His panicked thoughts are shattered by a loud, rhythmic banging from outside, an improvised alarm clock. The sudden noise jolts him fully awake, his expression shifting to one of pure shock. Peering through the window is Helmet, who cheekily asks what Kaido is doing up so early. With a knowing grin, he teases him, asking if he had a fun night now that he's living with Lady Sierra and Lady Liza. He looks utterly exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Kaido can only manage a weak acknowledgement, admitting to Helmet that he couldn't sleep a wink. Later, now dressed, Kaido is confronted by the gaunt, undead resident. The man reminds Kaido of his promise that they would all live together, and confesses that while he was initially ethically against the sleeping arrangement, he is now simply jealous of Lord Kaido. He continues his complaint, noting that Sierra is blunt with everyone except for Kaido. Helmet overhears and asks if there's already a real angel among them, but the undead man shudders, insisting that Lady Sierra is scary. The conversation shifts to Sierra's contributions. The undead man mentions she is doing a great job exterminating monsters and hunting for meat. Helmet, a devout Sierra worshipper, feigns outrage at the casual tone, calling him a heretic, while the undead man just wants more useful information about her faith. As they speak, Sierra and Liza arrive. Helmet greets them warmly, apologizing for the wait and complimenting Liza on how light on her feet she seems. Kaido and the undead man immediately notice a large, jagged tear in the leg of Liza's habit. The undead man is aghast, wondering what could have torn it so violently, but Liza cheerfully explains that the leg part was torn by monsters, so she simply re-sewed it. She noted with some excitement that her new attire was a matching set with Lady Sierra's. The Archangel, however, merely offered a sleepy murmur in response. The simple, dark garments were indeed identical, a fact that did not go unnoticed by others. This observation caused Kaido and Helmet to avert their gazes with a slight blush, while their undead companion offered a wide, approving grin. Helmet, however, quickly changed the subject, gesturing towards a pitcher. He explained that while they had water, it was primarily for drinking, and their supply was too limited for much else. His words prompted a realization from Liza. She admitted they had grown accustomed to the scarcity, but mused that with a plentiful supply, they could improve their cooking and even have the luxury of bathing. Helmet agreed with her sentiment, glancing around at their small group. He pointed out the stark truth. Aside from Sierra, everyone was covered in a layer of dirt. The contrast was undeniable. While Helmet and Liza showed the grime of their living conditions, Sierra remained immaculately clean. Flustered by this fact, Liza turned to the Archangel and timidly asked how she managed to stay so clean all the time. Sierra calmly explained her secret. She revealed that she covers the surface of her body with a thin film of magic, a barrier that prevents dirt from sticking and keeps her from getting wet in the rain. Hearing this, Helmet's expression grew somber. He admitted he felt bad for Liza, but confessed that, as he'd said before, fetching a larger amount of water was simply too difficult for them. The discussion about their water supply continued. Kaido, looking surprisingly grimy himself, suggested digging a well. He then clarified his true goal, not simply finding more water, but securing it in a way that eliminates the grueling work of fetching it, calling their current method the opposite of efficient. In response, Helmet explained that after much trial and error, the current system was found to be the best they could manage. He gestured toward the settlement, noting that its state was proof that others had tried and failed to find a better way in the past. He looked down at his hand, contemplating the grim reality. Yet, a possibility sparked within him, born from something Sierra had told him earlier. Holding on to that hope, Kaido led his companions, Sierra and Liza, on a 3-day journey. They finally arrived at the edge of a vast, ruined city, a place where an angel was said to reside. They paused, taking in the desolate landscape. Kaido recognized it as the legendary city of water, Browsen, though it was now clearly a city that had long since perished. Liza reacted with disbelief, exclaiming that they had spent 3 whole days traveling to get there. Kaido could only confirm that she was right. He remained determined, stating that since they had come so far, they should search until they were certain there was nothing to be found. He added that he was curious about the fate of the Angel of Browsen and noted that while the city appeared long abandoned, some of its technology might still remain. Hearing this, Sierra seemed perplexed by their perception of the journey. To her, she explained, the arduous 3-day trip had felt like only a split second. Their attention was then captured by the city's central, towering structure. Kaido observed its strange construction, noting a waterway running along its side. He deduced that there must be a water source at the very top, with a system designed to send water down to the city below. Following the structure upward with his eyes, he made a startling discovery. Liza identified the massive figure at the summit as the Angel of Creation, Lady Yuri's. Kaido realized with a shock that it was another stone statue seal, just like the one that had imprisoned Sierra. He asks Sierra if the statue is all right, and she explains that the flashy seal is exactly to Lady Yuri's taste. Furthermore, she notes that Yuri's herself is protecting the seal with magic, preventing its deterioration. Deciding on a course of action, Kaido tells Sierra to come with him, mentioning a plan involving an alarm clock. Sierra continues her explanation, revealing a deep connection. The Angel of Creation, she states, was originally her other wing. They were a pair. This is why, even with her memory loss, she was able to remember Yuri's. Hearing this, Kaido's resolve hardens. He speaks to a small, glowing form of Sierra, declaring that if Yuri's is simply going to remain sealed away, she should join them instead. He mulls over what he's been told. Yuri's is moody, selfish, and will only help if she feels indebted, such as by being awakened. Though he internally notes this personality seems ill-suited for reconstruction, he weighs this against their failure to find the city's technology. Concluding they cannot leave empty-handed, he steels himself and announces, "Let's do this." With his decision made, Kaido stands before the massive statue, holding up a small, rectangular device. As Helmet and Liza watch from a distance, he shouts its activation command. Alarm clock. The device activates, and the stone seal immediately begins to crack and crumble. From within the shattering prison, a winged figure emerges, stretching with a wide yawn as if waking from a deep sleep. Her form becomes solid and free, her feet touching down as the last remnants of the stone seal shatter into dust around her. The angel of creation now stands fully revealed where the statue once was. Below, Liza stares up in wide-eyed astonishment, whispering that she has appeared. Nearby, Sierra materializes into her full angelic form, her gaze fixed upon the other angel. A gentle, nostalgic smile crosses her face. "Archangel Sierra," she says, identifying herself after their long separation. "It's been a while." She looks upon the newly freed angel, her former counterpart, and speaks her name. "Yuri's, it's been a while." Yuri's floats in the air, her wings spread wide. She agrees, noting that Sierra's bluntness is unmistakable. She then adds that she had heard Sierra was sealed, questioning how this reunion is possible. In response, Sierra confirms she was sealed but explains that, just like Yuri's, she was resurrected. She gestures toward the young man standing between them, identifying Kaido as the human responsible. Yuri's looks down at him with an amused curiosity. Kaido seizes the opportunity, pleading for Yuri's to lend her strength to his land, Argo. She flatly refuses. Addressing him as human boy, she remarks that angels are not normally things to be used by his kind, though she notes with interest that Sierra seems quite taken with him. Continuing, Yuri's explains her philosophy. She is only interested in things that pique her intellectual curiosity. She reveals that after her city of Browsen perished, she grew bored and chose to seal herself away. Her words trigger a realization in Kaido. He understands now that even while she was a statue, she had been with the land of Browsen the entire time, a silent witness to its fate. At the mention of Browsen, tears stream down Sierra's face. She confesses that she had kept an eye on them, but they perished on their own when she stepped away for a bit. Filled with sorrow, she asks if there's no longer any need to watch over them. Yuri's, however, recalls the city with pride. "Browsen was a beautiful city," she states, then confirms with absolute certainty, "Of course, it was my capital." Hearing her attachment to her lost home, Kaido's expression hardens with resolve. He makes a vow, declaring he will make Argo a rich land. No, even more prosperous than her Browsen ever was. His audacious declaration catches her completely off guard. A blush spreads across Yuri's face as she stammers, utterly speechless at his bold promise. Kaido met the angel's stunned silence with an unwavering gaze. His eyes shone with conviction as he declared that with everyone's help, he was certain they could succeed. His words seemed to resonate with her. She glanced down from her perch, her eyes falling upon the villagers below. Helmet and the others looked up, their faces filled with a hopeful joy that softened her own expression. She remained silent for a long moment, a thoughtful expression settling on her face as she processed the scene. Then, without a word, she raised her hand toward the sky. Kaido watched from the ground, his eyes widening in surprise as droplets began to fall from the heavens, a gentle rain descending upon the parched land. The rain was met with immediate celebration. Helmet looked up, realizing it must be creation magic. Beside him, Liza cheered that the rain felt good, as a small, glowing, squid-like creature materialized in the downpour. As the life-giving rain continued, Yuri's turned her attention back to Kaido. She announced that she had become a little interested, and, since he was willing to go so far, she would take a look at his territory. Holding a glowing orb of energy between his hands, Kaido explains the nature of his power. He reveals that his creation magic is all-powerful, capable of producing anything at all, with the sole exception of living beings. He can conjure materials as varied as trees, paper, stone, or even iron. To demonstrate, he focuses his power and with a sharp cry, summons forth a gush of pure, clean water. Watching the miraculous display, Sierra lets out a gasp of pure amazement. One of the gaunt, undead men is instructed to line up and drink. He clicks his tongue in mild annoyance, complaining about the small amount of water provided. As he drinks, however, a visible change occurs. A muscle on his thin arm suddenly flexes with renewed vitality, causing him to look down in surprise. Nearby, Sierra watches with a faint, knowing smile. Realizing its precious nature, the man greedily gulps down the rest of the water, thinking it's too valuable to waste. From a distance, Kaido watches in shock, exclaiming in disbelief at the transformation of the skull-faced man. Moments later, as Sierra carries a large bowl through the settlement, she looks up to the sky in awe. Floating majestically above the town is Yuri's, the angel of creation, now fully awakened and free. Below, the young girl Liza, now conscious, also gazes upward in wonder. The transformation is unbelievable. The once dilapidated and ruined settlement has been miraculously restored into a splendid and impressive town. Half a day has passed. Liza, now fully recovered, stands beside Sierra and marvels at the settlement's transformation, noting how much has changed in the short time she was away. Sierra quietly affirms her observation. She continues with a bright smile, explaining that since Lady Yuri's arrived in Argo and began creating various things, the entire place has undergone rapid development. Brimming with energy, Liza bursts through a doorway, cheerfully announcing her return and calling out for Kaito. Her call reaches Kaito, whose eyes are narrowed in profound exhaustion, betraying the immense strain he is under. He is hunched over a desk, surrounded by documents, his body trembling from fatigue as he forces himself to continue drafting plans for the settlement. From behind him, the angel Yuri's gently plucks a completed plan from his desk. She reviews it with an amused smile, finding his work interesting. As Kaito finally collapses onto the desk, completely spent, Yuri's floats away with the document. She cheerfully tells Liza that she will go and create what is on the plans right away. Kaito manages to lift his head, finding Liza and Sierra now standing beside him. They greet him, welcoming him back from his intense focus. His eyes widen in alarm. Liza asks if he's okay, but Kaito ignores his own condition, his voice filled with urgency as he asks if she is all right. A small, cat-like creature observes that Kaito looks like he hasn't slept in days. The creature's comment is followed by a sharp, magical jolt, a wake-up call that strikes Kaito directly, causing him to cry out in shock and surprise. He sits back, remarking on Yuri's incredible creative drive. Helmet agrees, noting that Argo's development has been remarkable. He was shocked when he returned from a hunt to find a massive Yuri shrine had been erected. It's so large it now serves as a landmark for the entire settlement. Kaito concedes that while it's helpful, leaving the architectural design entirely to Yuri's unique sensibilities has produced some interesting results. Her creations are indeed peculiar. The artisan Angel Yuri Shrine is a colossal statue of a winged figure, so large it dwarfs the nearby rooftops. Another structure, a private house, is a simple, tofu-like cube adorned with polka dots, which is nevertheless described as having artistic merit. A third building, the Lord's House, is more conventional. It is a large, stately home with towers and a balcony, designed with an entrance large enough for a carriage to enter directly for a brief rest. Liza gazes at the new house in awe, exclaiming that it's wonderful, just like a castle. Kaito can only agree, looking slightly overwhelmed by the structure. Helmet explains that since Kaito began providing blueprints, the residents have been able to work with confidence. Based on his designs, Yuri's has constructed numerous useful facilities, including a well and a food storage building. Even the ridiculously large Yuri's shrine has found a purpose as a watchtower. As they speak, the small cat-like creature appears, presenting a bowl. It announces that it brought the item from the newly constructed cultivation center. Kaito takes the bowl, his expression shifting to one of pure delight. Peeking out from the soil is a tiny green sprout. It's sprouting, he gasps. He explains that he had Yuri's create a cultivation center, a facility for growing crops indoors. He admits that he had been worried about whether anything would actually grow. Helmet is astonished. He remarks that no matter how many seeds they had planted before, it was always futile. Yet the moment they tried the cultivation method Kaito suggested, they saw results. Cradling the bowl, Kaito lovingly calls the sprout my little tomato. When Helmet asks what magic he used, Kaito clarifies that it was not magic at all. He was simply applying knowledge from his studies in Fellbach. He explains that for crops to thrive, the soil must be rich with microorganisms, so he'd been mixing various substances into Argo's soil to enrich it. He explains to his small, cat-like companion that he is enriching the soil by mixing in various materials he gathered from the northern forest, including leftovers, bones, and other, less mentionable components. The creature asks if he is mixing it all together, and Kaito confirms, giving credit to Lady Yuri's for creating the facility. He notes, however, that fundamentally, crops cannot grow without water. Despite the challenges a single, healthy sprout pushes through the soil, the first step toward Argo's complete self-sufficiency. Meanwhile, high above the settlement, the Archangel Sierra soars gracefully through the air. Elsewhere, the Angel of Creation, Yuri's, now freed from her stone form, lifts her head. An enticing aroma has drifted to her, piquing her curiosity. The source of the scent is a plate of freshly grilled skewers, steaming and ready to be eaten. In a common area, a recovered and cheerful Liza waves to Yuri's. She calls out, inviting everyone to join her for a meal. The small cat creature cheers, excited to see Liza's cooking skills on display. Nearby, Helmet remarks to Kaito that even though the long water-fetching expeditions have ended, the workload has actually increased with all the construction and farm labor. Kaito agrees, acknowledging that their primary problem now is a shortage of manpower. He muses that Argo is still a developing village. To attract people from the outside, they will need to offer something uniquely appealing. As if in answer, Liza smiles warmly, asking if everyone is ready for dinner. She presents the meal she has prepared, a traditional-looking spread set before the group. As everyone prepares to eat, Kaido notices Sierra sitting in a small, water-filled tub at the table and wonders aloud what sort of custom this is. As they begin to eat, everyone takes their first bite in near unison. Kaido, Helmet, and Sierra all sample the food with anticipation. Her eyes widen in delight, a blissful expression spreading across her face as she savors the incredible flavor. Seeing their reactions, Liza holds up one of the key ingredients for Kaido to see. She explains that it's a shiado mushroom, a delicacy so prized in the Empire that it's traded at high prices for its exquisite taste. Helmet praises her skill, exclaiming how delicious it is. The small, cat-like creature also offers its thanks. Liza, however, remains humble, insisting that her cooking skills aren't that special and that the quality of the ingredients is what truly makes the dish. Her words spark a realization in Kaido. This is it, he thinks. Liza continues, explaining that the mushroom's habitat overlaps with a monster's territory, making it difficult to harvest. However, she adds, they managed a large haul that day, thanks to Sierra's help. He turns to Helmet, his eyes alight with an idea. Helmet, he exclaims, this might be how we can increase our manpower. He lays out his plan with conviction. They will market the shiado mushroom as Argo's specialty product. He declares that its flavor is so divine it will attract people from all over who are seeking it out. Hearing this, Sierra's eyes light up with enthusiasm. Then let's go shiado hunting right now, she declares, ready for action. Before he can react, she grabs him by the collar, announcing that she'll help. As she pulls him along into a sudden departure, Kaido yelps in surprise, questioning if this counts as helping. He struggled to keep his footing as Sierra, carrying Liza with ease, pulled him deeper into the forest. Panting, he tried to keep up with the Archangel's relentless pace as she urged him onward. They paused briefly, and she explained that their destination was even further into the primeval forest where the shiado mushrooms grew. Sierra warned him that while the area held valuable herbs and ingredients, it was also the territory of unusually ferocious monsters. She quickly reassured him that she would protect him, her thoughts already drifting to the delicious meal they would have. His concern was momentarily forgotten as a peculiar, glowing plant caught his eye. He found himself strangely captivated by its unnatural luminescence, a pull he couldn't quite explain, until Sierra's voice, calling his name, broke the trance. She pointed ahead, announcing that this was the spot where she had previously found the mushrooms. Kaido agreed to begin their search in the area, but when he turned, Sierra was already gone. He wondered if she had impatiently rushed ahead on her own. As he stood alone, a colossal, horned reptile with a maw full of sharp teeth emerged from the trees, its shadow falling over him. The beast unleashed a deafening roar, and a raw scream of terror was torn from Kaido's throat. In a flash of light, Sierra descended from the sky, her attack a swift, powerful blur that slammed into the creature. Just as quickly, she was back, proudly presenting a massive shiado mushroom she had found. Still reeling on the ground, Kaido looked up at the Archangel, who now held Liza once more. He breathed her name, marveling at her effortless display of power. His attention was drawn by Liza, who, now awake, pointed excitedly towards the horizon. She had spotted the Yuri's shrine. Kaido looked on with a sense of relief, recognizing the landmark of his beloved new home. He remarked that another day had passed in their journey. Beside him, his small, cat-like companion proudly held up a basket overflowing with shiado mushrooms, cheering about their large haul, but also fretting that they might have disrupted the local ecosystem in the process. Turning his attention to Sierra, he asked her to take all of his mushrooms, requesting she use them sparingly. Sierra simply agreed. Meanwhile, the cat creature's attention was drawn to a beautiful flower Kaido had picked, asking if he'd been searching for other things as well. Kaido, who had forgotten about the flower amidst the recent chaos, acknowledged her find. Elsewhere, a young woman with distinctly pointed ears held an identical flower. She felt a mysterious quality emanating from it, pondering if it could possibly be of angelic origin. Her keen, pointed ear suddenly twitched, catching a sound. She turned her head sharply, her expression shifting to one of alert surprise as she questioned the noise. Now standing alongside a companion with similar features, she faced an unseen party. Stating that they were in a hurry, she issued a terse command to silently hand over their baggage. In the clearing, Kaido looks up in astonishment. Before him stands a tall, elf-like woman with long, flowing, light-colored hair, her sword drawn and ready. Another woman with short, dark hair stands beside her. Kaido can only stare, wondering what manner of being she is. Reacting with stunning speed, his fist flashes upward in a powerful uppercut. The single, decisive blow sends the group of attackers flying helplessly through the air. With the immediate threat neutralized, he turns to Sierra. He explains that he didn't sense any malice from the woman, which is why he drew his sword but hesitated to engage. Sierra expresses her relief that he is safe, and Kaido admits his heart nearly stopped from the shock. He seems to have a realization, wondering aloud if the reason he punched her was out of pure instinct to protect Sierra. He lets out a breath of relief. Before him, the three attackers are subdued on the ground. One lies face down, while the other two kneel, defeated. As two of the captured women watch, their companion with the short, dark hair begins to stir. One of them notes with alarm that she is waking up. Now facing all three conscious attackers, who are kneeling before him, Kaido points his sword forward. He demands that they talk, asking who they are and why they attacked him. His small, cat-like companion floats beside him, offering its own conclusion. It states plainly that they are just bandits. Kaido listens, a pensive look on his face. The creature elaborates, explaining that bandits who target adventurers and merchants frequently appear on the road to the Empire. It reasons that since the woman pointed an S-sword at Sierra, she must be one of them. Kaido reacts with explosive frustration, shouting that such reasoning is absurd. He tries to de-escalate the situation, telling the frantic elf woman, Liza, to calm down. She hysterically accuses them of some wrongdoing, but Kaido insists they would do no such thing, reminding her that while no one was hurt this time, they must ensure it doesn't happen again. Sierra's expression turns serious. She agrees that it was fine only because she was there, but concedes that if it had been someone else facing them, they could not have let the matter slide. Taking charge, Kaido turns to the elves with a decisive look. He raises a hand, proposing to make a pact. In response, the long-haired elf introduces herself as Adurna. As Kaido has an internal moment of confirmation, Adurna explains that they came to the human kingdom in search of a certain rare ingredient. At the mention of a rare ingredient, both Kaido and Sierra are visibly taken aback. This ingredient is legendary. It is said to purge every impurity from the body, grant heavenly bliss to whoever eats it, and carry the blessing of an angel's protection. Adurna then identifies the item in question, the basket of mushrooms Kaido is carrying. She names it the Heaven's Dew Herb. She continues her explanation, admitting she has her own reasons for needing it. Seeing that he possessed so much of the precious herb, she panicked, fearing he might be a reckless overharvester. In that moment, thinking she might never get it, her body moved on its own. Liza, hearing this confession, shrieks defensively, issuing a vague threat against them if they try anything. Ignoring her companion, Adurna reveals the truth. Her father has been bedridden for a long time, and the scent of death grows stronger around him each day. She explains that after hearing of the miraculous Heaven's Dew Herb from her people's wise men, she left her homeland and eventually found them. With quiet desperation, she states that she wants to save him, no matter what it takes. She cries out for her father, her desperation laid bare. Kaido watches her, the word father echoing in his mind as he glances at the Heaven's Dew Herb in the basket. An image of a stern, mustached man, her father, flashes through the scene. Her companion, the short-haired elf Liza, watches the emotional exchange, her eyes widening in sudden, shocked realization. The understanding dawns on her. Adurna had been banished, just like she and Kaido were. Liza Einhorn, standing nearby, looks on with concern. Kaido's gaze remains fixed on the scene, his expression thoughtful and unreadable. Overwhelmed, Adurna covers her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. As she weeps, Liza Einhorn quietly approaches her. Adurna is startled from her grief by a sudden shout. Liza the elf stands before her, demanding to know how she could possibly recognize the herb. Adurna, flustered and apologetic, stammers that the mood never felt right to bring it up. Liza explains to the others that Adurna's shock upon seeing the mushroom was undeniable. She admits that she usually serves in the kitchens and got a bit carried away, and that Adurna had run off in the commotion. The small, cat-like creature confirms that the mushroom is indeed a very rare ingredient. A clear description of the herb surfaces: spherical petals split into 5 points, a firm stem standing straight up, and glowing pollen drifting around it. Upon recalling this description, Adurna's despair vanishes, replaced by a jolt of certainty. That's it, she cries out, her eyes wide with renewed hope as Sierra looks on. While tilling the soil, Kaido is approached by a young girl with feline ears. She asks if he was truly all right with giving away the shallot to the elves. He pauses his work, confirming that he was. After hearing their story, he explains it sounded like they were also struggling for food. She notes that, thanks to Lady Yuri's, they can now cultivate shallot and argort themselves, having kept enough for a starter culture. Kaido agrees, adding that the elves' plight reminded him of how argort used to be, and he simply couldn't turn them away. He continues, explaining that for now, their main problems are shortage of workers and the monsters that show up to prey on the crops. As he mentions this, a large, insectoid creature appears in the fields, prompting him to shout out in alarm. The source of the commotion, however, is not the monster from his example. The cat-eared girl shrieks that it's Lady Sierra again, who is on the ground happily eating the new sprouts. Kaido pleads with the Archangel to at least wait until they're fully grown, while his companion laments that Sierra never listens. Later, as they walk along a cliff edge, the girl returns to the subject of their problems. She questions his plan, reminding him that they originally went to gather shallot to fix their lack of manpower, and that growing it from spores would take even longer. He acknowledges her point, but a confident smile forms on his face. He suggests that they might be able to solve their labor issue quite soon, even without waiting for the shallot to mature, leaving the girl utterly surprised. Meanwhile, at a high watch post, the undead resident on duty sighs at the boredom of his task. His vacant expression suddenly snaps to one of wide-eyed shock as he spots something approaching in the distance. His shock turns to outright panic. He screams a warning of big trouble as a large, organized group of figures marches steadily toward the settlement through the barren canyon. Among them, a familiar profile comes into view. The pointed ear and long, light hair belonged to Aderna, the elf Kaido had just encountered. She leads the way, her expression resolute. Behind her march Liza and the rest of the banished elves, their entire party now advancing on Argort with clear purpose. She arrives before them, her expression serene. With a soft smile, she announces that they have come, just as promised. Her announcement continues, revealing the true nature of their arrival. She declares that they are elf settlers, 100 of them in total, offering themselves as a shocking repayment for the favor Kaido had done. Below her, Kaido and the other residents of Argort can only stare in stunned disbelief at the massive group of elves who have come to join their settlement. Kaido stands before a crowd of his people, his expression one of utter shock. The residents of Argo, including Helmet and the bald undead man, stare back at him, equally stunned by the new arrivals. His shock is so great that he lets out a cry of disbelief. Sierra, lying down nearby, asks if it's fine that he doesn't have to do anything, while the small cat creature questions if they had made such a deal. Kaido confirms that was the arrangement, reminding them of their earlier conversation about the elves. He had agreed that if the elves ever came, they would bring a certain number of people with them. He then points towards the newcomers, directing Sierra's attention to a specific elf girl among them. In the distance, across the barren landscape of Argo, a large group of people stand assembled, waiting. From this group, an elf with long, light-colored hair steps forward, her expression serious. She asks if the settlement is short on hands. Kaido confirms her assessment with a simple. He explains that Argo has only just begun rebuilding, so they're short on people for every conceivable task. He continues, elaborating that they've been trying various things to deal with the labor shortage, and that Shayet is part of that plan. Fortunately, he adds, they now have a clear path to producing enough food and are ready to take in more people, musing that it would be ideal if others were willing to move there. The long-haired elf girl's expression brightens with determination. With a confident smile, she declares, then please leave it to me. Her voice rings out across the plains as she makes a bold proposal to Kaido. Let's make a pact. She stands beside Kaido, who looks out at the assembled crowd of elves and admits his surprise that she actually brought them. Below, a large group of elves, some carrying tools, waits expectantly. He continues speaking, and she replies with a serene expression that elves always keep their pacts. Her response seems to satisfy him, as he recalls that this is exactly what she had said before. She offers a slight, knowing smile. He then voices a concern. With so many people, he wonders if the elven kingdom will be able to function. Aderna reassures him, explaining that elves have long lives and a large population. Furthermore, she clarifies that these individuals are here as temporary support, not to settle permanently, and reminds him that he asked her not to bring anyone against their will. She elaborates that the elves present were drawn to Lord Kaido, being curious types eager to see human lands and meet the person who saved the life of the king of the elves. Kaido is flustered by this dramatic retelling, stammering that his version was much less grand, but Aderna simply confirms her account. He freezes on the word king. Aderna, feigning mild surprise, asks if she failed to mention it. She then reveals that the king of the elves is her father. As Kaido stands in stunned silence, Aderna gestures to a tall, robed figure standing nearby and formally introduces the man as her father. The figure turns his head, revealing a regal elf with long, slicked-back hair. Kaido's eyes widen in shock as he realizes he is face-to-face with the king of the elves. The king looks down at Kaido with a calm, steady gaze. He introduces himself as Samuel, the king who rules over the elves. Kaido's mind races, attempting to map the elven hierarchy onto the empire's ranks. He quickly understands that Samuel's position as king is at the absolute pinnacle, far above his own station, and the weight of the situation crashes down on him. He recoiled in surprise as the elven king, Samuel, formally welcomed him to Argort, raising a hand to halt him in his tracks. Still processing the situation, Kaido could only stare as Samuel, already seated on the ground, gestured for him to do the same. The king addressed him as Sir Kaito, my lifesaver, explaining that if he didn't show such respect, Kaido wouldn't speak to him as an equal. Samuel began by acknowledging that Kaido had handled his daughter's foolishness quietly. He then explained that among elves, a rite known as ear-cutting is performed when swearing an absolute pact. He added that the entire incident with Aderna was born from her rash concern for his own health. With a sharp glint, he produced a knife. Addressing Kaido directly, the king declared his wish, for them to make a new ear-cutting pact together. His eyes narrowed with intent. The pact, he stated, was to repay the debt created when Kaido forgave his daughter. Aderna began to protest, but her father apologized to her, explaining that as king, this was something he was obligated to do, especially since Lord Kaido had gone out his way for them. Kaido could only stammer in agreement, while Aderna watched in horror, calling out weakly to her father. On the surface, the initial conflict had been resolved. Aderna had attacked Sierra, and in exchange for an apology, Kaido had offered forgiveness. The matter seemed settled, but in reality, the king's arrival changed everything. Kaido's act of forgiveness was now reframed as him overlooking the princess's mistake, creating a new, significant debt that Samuel felt he had to repay. A realization struck Kaido. This wasn't about debt. Samuel was testing him. By offering to place himself in a position of obligation, the king was gauging Kaido's character. An untrustworthy person would seize the leverage, but Samuel wanted to see the true nature of the man who had saved his daughter. He watched as the elven king, Samuel, spoke with grave intensity about the chains of fate that bound him. The king declared that the burdens binding the elves all began with his own life, and that he was prepared to sever that chain with his own death. In the face of such a dire pronouncement, his mind raced, desperately searching for another way. There had to be some alternative to this grim sacrifice. His frantic thoughts coalesced into a sudden insight. An idea took shape, symbolized by a faint, glowing crest that seemed to manifest in the palm of his hand. With newfound resolve, he looked directly at the king and stated firmly that he would accept the pact. His acceptance caused Princess Aderna to gasp in tearful horror, but King Samuel merely watched with a knowing smile. Kaido was not finished, however, and quickly added a condition. He explained that taking a king's life in exchange for the princess's mistake was far too great a price. It would leave him with much more than his fair share of the bargain. Instead of life, he made his counteroffer. With a confident smile, he declared that what he truly wanted to borrow from the king was his wisdom. The audacious request made the elven king erupt in laughter. He commended Kaido's twisted logic, noting that one cannot borrow wisdom from the dead. As Aderna realized her father was safe, the king's amusement settled, and he quietly asked if Kaido's proposal was truly enough. This display deeply impressed the king. He mused that while humans could be petty, encountering a gem like Kaido was an irresistible opportunity. With a flash of a blade, he moved, not to cut Kaido's ear, but to snip the metal ring of his earring, causing the young man to yelp in surprise. As he reeled, the king explained that the true ear-cutting pact was an exchange of earrings. He laughed, joking that since Kaido didn't wear any, he'd just take the whole ear before admitting it was a jest. He then clarified that these pacts were customs for elves alone, and what the youth knew was just a simplified version. He smiles, relieved, as the elven king concludes their agreement. Samuel promises that, as elves, they will repay Kaido with solid results whenever he calls upon them for aid. Meanwhile, far away at the Felbach family estate, Kaido's younger brother, Cleo, arrives. A self-satisfied smirk plays on his lips as he strides toward the entrance of the Grand Manor. He finds his father, Lord Felbach, seated behind a large desk. Cleo greets him enthusiastically, stating it has been a while and that he rushed back to report his results as soon as possible. Lord Felbach looks on grimly, acknowledging his son's presence before issuing a cold warning not to disappoint him, especially considering what Kaido has done. Something new is stirring within the Felbach family home. From his seat of power, Lord Felbach studies a map of the territories entrusted to him by the Emperor. He reflects on his decisions. His other sons sent to Fermine, and his eldest, Kaido, dispatched to the desolate land of Argort. With a sinister smile, he notes that several dozen days have passed, and he has summoned his sons to report on their management of the lands. In his office, a subordinate reports to Lord Felbach, praising a certain skill called Fountain of Wealth for its ability to bring blessings to dried-up land. The man promises that by the next season, he will show Lord Felbach an even more prosperous territory. The Lord listens, satisfied, thinking to himself that the skill is proving as useful as he had anticipated. As the reports continue, another subordinate confirms that there are no problems in his assigned area. Lord Felbach curtly dismisses him, calling for the next person in line. The subordinate asks where he is to conduct his inspection. Staring out a window, Lord Felbach mutters about his worthless son, wondering if he is even still alive, before giving the order, go to Argort. Meanwhile, in Argort, Kaido awakens with a jolt. He finds himself sprawled on a cobblestone street, his mind hazy and confused. He looks up to see a young elf woman holding a tray of small cups. She wishes him a good morning, and he dazedly returns the greeting. Kaido recognizes her as Miss Frederica. She smiles warmly, offering him a drink, which he gratefully accepts. As he sips the drink, the memories of the previous night return. He recalls drinking until dawn, enjoying the wine that elves like Samuel had brought. Frederica then offers him some medicated tea, explaining that it will clear the haze and sober him up. A wider view reveals the aftermath of a massive celebration. People are passed out all around the town's central fountain. Kaido reflects on the past several dozen days since the elves' arrival, noting how happy and fulfilling life has become. He remembers waking up multiple people who had passed out during the festivities, thinking how the elves, who had initially just sought food and lodging, had changed everything. He shares his thoughts with Helmet, who is also recovering nearby. Helmet agrees, expressing his own shock at how quickly things have become civilized, crediting the knowledge brought by Lord Samuel and the people who arrived with Lady Aderna. Helmet surveyed the results of their collective labor. The town's construction was now sturdy. The decorations and clothing showed beautiful craftsmanship, and the food being prepared was good enough to rival that of imperial chefs. He remarked that everyone's work was splendid. Nearby, King Samuel stood with his people, while a sleepy Aderna begged for more rest. Kaido watched them all, reflecting that after working together, the distance between the different races seemed to have shrunk considerably. Platters on a cobblestone street were laden with grilled meats and other delicacies, a testament to their newfound prosperity. The Archangel, Sierra, took a bite of the food, her eyes closing in bliss as she declared it delicious. Kaido, looking down at his own empty hands, suddenly realized his food was gone. He looked over at Sierra, finding the sight of her eating everyone's fill an interesting development from when he first arrived. He felt truly blessed. The people of Argord had accepted him after his exile, and friends from other races had lent their strength. This place, he realized with his hands clasped, had become precious to him. His reflection was cut short when Helmet called out, spotting a man he didn't recognize. Helmet questioned if the stranger was a new exile or a bandit. Kaido, however, raised a hand to stop him, stating firmly that although it was the first time he'd seen the man since being exiled, he knew him. The newcomer smiled warmly, bowing his head slightly as he praised Lord Kaido for the wonderful state of the town. In that moment, Kaido identified him. This was his father's right-hand man, a messenger from House Felbach. Now wearing his official tabard, the messenger expressed his astonishment at Argort's restoration, revealing he had been inspecting the town since the previous day. He added that Lord Alphonse would surely be pleased as well, a comment that made Kaido recoil in shock, whispering his father's name. The messenger mused that perhaps Kaido's father also intended to get a troubleshooter out of his way, since Kaido hadn't met his expectations. This sparked a realization in Kaido. He understood now that being sent here as a local lord was originally meant to help his overworked father. Managing this one place made him see how incredible his father must be to rule the entirety of the vast Felbach domain. He holds the inspector's letter, a determined look on his face. He realizes that with Argord's current success, it should now be a benefit to his father. Following this realization, Kaido and his companions, Sierra, Helmet, Adurna, and the cat girl, let out a collective cheer. Below them, the large gates of Argort swing open, signaling their departure. Their journey takes them to a bustling human city, where Adurna gazes at the unfamiliar streets and buildings with wide-eyed curiosity. As she walks alongside Kaido, Adurna remarks that this is her first time in such a place. For Kaido, however, it is a return as he recognizes the city as Felbach, his family's domain. Before they proceed, Kaido turns to Helmet and the cat girl, reminding them of a task they had previously discussed. After they confirm, Kaido announces that he and Sierra will now head to the main house. Noticing the elves' apprehension, Helmet offers some reassurance. He tells them not to worry, as their fine clothes will ensure they blend in and are not mistaken for thugs. Adurna and the cat girl, however, still appear anxious. The cat girl thanks the elves for tailoring their outfits, but Adurna confesses that her worry is about something else entirely. Sierra tries to comfort her, remarking that she looks every bit the part of a sheltered young lady from a good family, which only flusters Adurna further. Moments later, Kaido stands in a grand, opulent room, now wearing a formal cape bearing the Felbach family crest. With Sierra beside him, he looks towards the window and formally addresses his father, noting it has been a while. His greeting is met with a sarcastic remark from his younger brother, Cleo, who asks if he was scared. From a nearby chair, Lord Felbach coolly observes the scene, commenting on Kaido having brought women with him. Lord Felbach then gestures to the letter on his desk. He states that he has read the messenger's reports, and, though he initially thought it impossible, he must admit that the current state of Argort is splendid. He beams at the unexpected praise, while his younger brother, Cleo, stares in wide-eyed disbelief at the sudden turn of events. The praise leaves him momentarily stunned as his father places a hand on his shoulder, declaring him useful. Lord Felbach then clarifies his thoughts, admitting that when Kaido's skill was first revealed, he considered it the most useless dud imaginable. But now he retracts that judgment. He calls out, asking his father to wait. Beside him, Sierra watches silently. Cleo, still reeling, cannot believe the results of the frontier development report he is holding. Lord Felbach simply hums in thought, ignoring Kaido's plea as he considers his next move. After a moment of consideration, Lord Felbach makes his decision. He declares that it is settled, and then informs Kaido that he will serve as the lord of another territory. Cleo clicks his tongue in frustration at this development. The order stuns Kaido. His father explains his reasoning, questioning why Kaido is so surprised. He states that he cannot simply let a man who successfully tamed a wasteland remain idle and formally summons him back to the main house. His thoughts immediately turn to the land he is leaving behind. He anxiously asks what will happen to Argort, and Sierra, standing beside him, shares his worried expression. His father brushes off the question, asking what Kaido means. He explains that based on the reports, Argort systems are in place, and everything is running smoothly, even without Kaido's presence. He declares that the people of Argort need to achieve independence and stand on their own. He looks his son directly in the eye, asking if he understands. He states plainly that Argort no longer needs him. A cold sweat breaks out on Kaido's brow as the weight of his father's words sinks in. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He is being exiled again. As he stands frozen in the darkness of this thought, Sierra reaches out and firmly grasps his hand. Her touch seems to break his stupor, and he lets out a cry of anguish, questioning why this is happening. The sudden outburst shocks Cleo, while Sierra watches Kaido with deep concern. His mind flashes back to a pivotal moment with Sierra. He had asked her what she was, and in response, she had simply suggested they live together there, in Argord. Bolstered by this memory, he turns away from his stunned father and brother. Holding Sierra's hand, he announces that he will be heading back to his home, to Argord. His brother, Alphonse, is aghast, questioning if he is serious. Alphonse presses him, his voice rising in disbelief. He asks if Kaido has grown attached to that bunch of former criminals. Kaido calmly confirms that he will stay in Argord, even if it means refusing their father's kindness. His brother erupts, shouting that as a member of House Fellbach, Kaido should do what's best for the family and that such selfishness will not be forgiven. Unmoved, Kaido simply states that the people of Argord are his precious people now. He continues, reminding them that they were the ones who abandoned and exiled him. Argord, he explains, is the place where everyone who received that same treatment has gathered. Tightening his grip on Sierra's hand, he makes a solemn vow. He will not abandon them. He will never let them go. This, he declares with finality, is his duty and his pride as the Lord of Argord. With a dismissive sound, he turns to leave with Sierra, stating that his people are waiting for him in his territory. Alphonse is left behind, trembling with rage. As Alphonse seethes, shouting Kaido's name, Lord Fellbach watches his eldest son depart. A small smile touches his lips as he observes that in just a short time, Kaido's face has started to look the part of a true lord. Returning to Argord, Kaido and Sierra are greeted warmly by Helmet and Liza, who exclaims in surprise and delight at their lord's return. He has returned to his companions. The young cat-eared girl rushes toward him with unbridled joy, her arms outstretched for a hug. Standing behind her, Helmet watches with a proud, satisfied smile, his arms crossed over his chest. Beside him, Liza clasps her hands in quiet, heartfelt relief. And at Kaido's side, Sierra observes the warm welcome with a gentle, knowing look. A look into the past reveals the roots of a bitter, sibling rivalry. From a young age, Kaido's younger brother, Cleo, felt he was always in Kaido's shadow. Whether in swordsmanship, academics, or even popularity, he perceived that Kaido was always the one who received praise, leaving Cleo to feel inferior despite his own noble efforts. Because of this, he grew to believe he was always second best. The resentment festered as he felt the position of family heir was always intended for his older brother from the very beginning. He had thought that with Kaido receiving a supposedly useless skill, the spotlight would finally shift to him. But that hope too was dashed. Back in the present, Lord Fellbach addresses his younger son, Cleo, who lounges casually while reviewing documents. The Lord questions why Cleo has not yet returned to his own domain. Cleo retorts by pointing out that Kaido also hasn't returned to his territory and seems to be plotting something within the Fellbach lands. He continues, suggesting it would be wise to observe Kaido's movements for a while. With a confident smirk, Cleo assures his father that he understands the situation perfectly and will not neglect his own duties or territory. His thoughts, however, betray a deeper animosity. The memory of Kaido's determined eyes irritates him immensely. Cleo internally vows to crush the spirit of that dud-skill bastard and send him back to his exile, furious at the idea of an outsider interfering with his homeland. Meanwhile, Kaido remains oblivious to his brother's scheming. Inside a rustic room, he explains a worldly concept to Sierra, telling her that just as adventurers have guilds to support them, merchants have their own version, a merchants' association. He then lays out his grand vision with infectious enthusiasm. He declares that from now on, they will sell the crops grown in Argo, becoming industrial merchants. He acknowledges that they must first overcome Argo's reputation as a penal colony to attract settlers, but he believes that by selling rare Shirato mushrooms alongside their other goods, they can successfully revitalize the town. At a nearby table, his loyal followers, Helmet, the cat-eared girl, and Liza, wait eagerly. A wide grin on his face, Helmet calls out cheerfully that they are ready and waiting for their meal. The results of their planning were laid out on the table. Carefully prepared dishes featuring Argo's unique produce, a tangible sign of the land's potential. Helmet celebrated their initial success with a triumphant thumbs up, exclaiming that their negotiations with the Merchants Association were a complete success. The association would secure a prime location for their direct sales outlet. The young cat girl chimed in excitedly, announcing that she had already decided on a name for their shop, Kaido's store. The celebration continued. Aderna, using the name Frederica, praised the young cat girl, noting how the cooking knowledge passed down from King Samuel had been instrumental. The king himself expressed his satisfaction at being able to help Kaido. Aderna then turned to her subordinate, Liza, instructing her to be of absolute service to Kaido in her place, as she and the king could not be away from their own lands for much longer. Liza stammered in agreement, flustered by the sudden responsibility. Helmet, ever jovial, remarked that he believed their success was owed to the charm of the beautiful women present. As the others celebrated, Aderna considered the situation more deeply. She mused that merchants had likely avoided Argo because they still perceived it as a desolate wasteland, seeing no reason to venture off the main road. This, she realized, was why Kaido planned to hold a demonstration and sale of Shirato mushrooms and other produce during the upcoming Felbach expedition, to prove the land's value. The first step was to establish a physical presence, a shop that would serve as the face of Argo's new industry. The goal was to improve the domain's public image and, in doing so, gain credibility within the Felbach territory. Gathering his small team, Kaido declared that the first phase of the plan he had formulated with King Samuel was now complete. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Felbach domain, news of Kaido's activities was beginning to spread. The information reached the ears of his father, Lord Felbach, who reacted with fury, questioning the very idea of Kaido engaging in business. Cleo, sitting across from him, calmly explained that his older brother was apparently planning to partner with a merchant association to expand his operations into Felbach territory. With a hint of false concern, Cleo wondered aloud what Kaido was thinking, suggesting his focus should be on managing his own lands. His father's rage turned to shock as he reviewed the details of the report. He was stunned to learn that the rare and valuable Shirato mushrooms could be harvested in Argo. The document outlined the terms. A 40% commission on sales would go to the Merchants Association, and more importantly, Kaido intended to begin paying taxes to the Felbach domain, a duty that had been waived while Argo was merely a penal colony. Cleo watched his father, thinking to himself that his brother was now actively working to bring profit to the family. The Lord's expression softened as he processed the implications. He conceded that, under normal circumstances, entrusting a domain to an inexperienced young man like Kaido would be an act of madness. However, he was forced to acknowledge that the benefits granted by his son's unique and useful skill were proving to be far greater than he could have anticipated. Meanwhile, Cleo Felbach seethed. He had always believed his brother's appraisal skill was a dud, a curse even. Yet now, Kaido was using it to rebuild the entire territory of Argo from scratch. Cleo gritted his teeth in frustration. He wondered if his brother's true strength was some hidden wisdom, but quickly dismissed the idea. He resolved that he would only grant opportunities to those he personally deemed useful. A realization dawned on him. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips before his expression hardened with grim determination. With his mind made up, he bowed to his father. "Well then, I shall take my leave," he stated. Lord Felbach, occupied with a small knife, simply ordered him to return to the domain quickly, as there was much to be done. As he departed, Cleo's face twisted into a menacing grin. He vowed internally that their next battle would be one of domain management. Back in Argo, Kaido was approached by a stout, unfamiliar man. The man looked at him and his companions, stating plainly that it would be better for them to cease their business operations. The man's tone suddenly escalated into a furious shout. "Kaido!" He bellowed that this was the end of the line. The Merchants Association was expelling them. The outburst was so sudden it sent Kaido stumbling backward onto the ground, leaving his companions staring in shock. He loomed over the fallen Kaido, confirming his identity as the Lord of Argo. He then formally introduced himself as a representative of the Felbach Merchants Association. The merchant then turned his attention to Helmet, reminding him that they had met just the other day when Kaido's group applied to open their store. He even commented on the delicious food they had served. His expression turned sorrowful as he explained that it was precisely because their venture was so promising that he had to deliver this painful news. He then leaned in, asking if they had heard the rumor. The merchant from the Felbach Association elaborated on the rumor he had mentioned. Word was spreading that a large quantity of goods was being brought in from Argo, causing unease among the local populace. He explained that the citizens of Felbach were growing anxious about exiles entering their town. Kaido listened intently while his companions, Helmet and the cat-eared girl, looked on, the girl questioning if this was truly the case. The merchant pressed on, asking rhetorically who was transporting these goods. Not Felbach merchants, but people from Argo. He stated that the citizens of the imperial capital seek safety, and the presence of exiles is perceived as a threat of being dragged into trouble. The strategy became clear to Kaido, a negative campaign. His realization was interrupted as the cat-eared girl slammed her hand on a crate, insisting the people of Argo are good. The merchant, flustered, quickly clarified that wasn't the issue. The problem was the bad rumor itself. He apologized for her outburst as Helmet tried to calm her. He then turned back to Kaido, explaining that with such a story circulating, no one would dare approach a shop from Argo, regardless of its quality. The merchant concluded that this must be the work of someone who dislikes Argo and is skilled with information. Meanwhile, the true source of the rumor, Cleo, laughed maniacally. He gloated over Kaido's misfortune, declaring that business is information warfare. He boasted that it's easy for him to make people believe lies, turning anything into garbage. He then addressed his attendant, who stood ready with a tray, confirming the man was one of his spies. Cleo laid out the next phase of his plan. The spy was to obtain Kaido's merchant list. He would then have his own people open a store in Felbach, selling the exact same ingredients, but at a much lower price. A feat made possible by the blessing of his unique skill on his domain. A sinister grin spread across his face. He mused that with a new store opening at this exact moment, the people of Felbach would surely assume it was the rumored Argo shop. This would prevent Kaido from ever opening a store under the Argo name, perfectly sabotaging his brother's attempt to improve Argo's reputation. But back at the confrontation, Kaido's expression suddenly shifted to one of cheerful resolution. To the shock of the merchant and his companion, he announced brightly, "All right, let's not open the store." He explains that his original plan is no longer viable. He had intended to open a store under a false name, build a reputation on the quality of their food, and only then reveal its origin. Now, however, he believes the bad rumors are so pervasive that no one would even be willing to try their products. Upon hearing this, Helmet slams his fist in frustration, questioning if they are simply meant to give up. The young cat-eared girl beside him looks downcast, lamenting all the hard work the people of Argo have put in. But Kaido counters their despair with a new idea, declaring that they will get help from a third party. His companions stare in shock at the unexpected proposal. He clarifies his plan. Instead of opening their own store, they will supply their products to an established merchant. He gestures to the member of the Felbach Merchants Association, identifying him as a potential partner. The merchant strokes his chin, considering the proposition. He understands that he would sell Argo's goods in his store without revealing their origin, boosting his sales while they avoid losses. However, he points out that the risk to his reputation is significant, and simply taking their produce isn't a fair return. Kaido slyly agrees, acknowledging the risk. To counter the merchant's hesitation, Kaido presents his true bargaining chip. He reveals the item to be a rare shiato, explaining that the people of Argo have a system for its stable production. He offers the merchant an exclusive monopoly, a return he claims will far outweigh any risk. The merchant's eyes widen in greed at the mention of the valuable vegetable. Sierra, however, looks worried. She reminds Kaido that they were only shown a single shiato, but he remains firm in his decision, ignoring her plea. His offer accepted, Kaido firmly shakes the merchant's hand, sealing their new agreement. Meanwhile, unaware of this new development, Cleo laughs triumphantly into his pillow, convinced that his sabotage has succeeded and his brother has been defeated. He lay in bed, a smug grin spreading across his face. The thought of Kaido retreating with his tail between his legs was so delightful he hadn't been able to sleep. Calling for his spy, he demanded a report on the current situation with both his own merchant association and Kaido's. The attendant began his report, stating that Kaido's store had indeed withdrawn from Felbach. Cleo burst into laughter, but his mirth was cut short as the attendant continued. He explained that an existing store was now selling the exact same product lineup that Kaido had planned to offer. Cleo's face fell in disbelief. With a furious shout, he leaped from his bed, pointing an accusing finger. It was obvious, he raged, that Kaido was simply funneling his goods through that other store. Just then, a maid burst into the room, excitedly announcing she had bought something wonderful at the morning market, the rare shiato. As she presented it, the spy's report concluded that the scarce vegetable was selling explosively among the wealthy, touted for its high quality. The attendant clarified that while Cleo's own goods were selling, profits were poor. Because Kaido's partner store offered identical items, they were forced into a price comparison, undercutting their earnings. Cleo could only grit his teeth in silent fury. His rage culminated in a destructive outburst. A window in the Felbach estate shattered as a furious scream echoed through the streets. Far from the city, Kaido and his companions made their way back along a dusty road, unaware of the tantrum their victory had caused. Upon their return to the village, Kaido remarked on how long they had been away in Felbach. Liza, looking relieved, declared their expedition a great success. He later reflected with his small companion that although the plan had changed, the result was for the best. Entrusting the sales to a local merchant meant they didn't have to divide their own people. Suddenly, Sierra froze, a look of pure horror on her face. "I've made a mistake," she uttered. As Kaido and the others turned in alarm, she cried out that their expedition was not a success after all. She had forgotten to bring back any food from Felbach. While Kaido's group grappled with their lack of food, a more immediate threat was taking shape. On a nearby ridge, Cleo, Felbach stood flanked by his private soldiers, their silhouettes stark against the sky as they watched their targets. He turned to his men, his voice sharp with command. A soldier acknowledged the order with a crisp "sir." His expression twisted with malice as he declared that while Kaido might think he had won, the one who laughs last is the one who survives. He believed that with force, he could finally inflict defeat upon his brother. He gave the order to his Felbach private soldiers, kill Kaido at their discretion. From their vantage point, the soldiers looked down upon Kaido, Sierra, and their small companion pulling their cart, completely unaware of the ambush being prepared. Cleo's voice echoed with a chilling promise of eternal defeat, a death sentence hanging over his brother's head. Suddenly, without warning, Sierra's eyes widened. She thrust her hand forward, unleashing a powerful lightning ray spell. The bolt of energy, crackling with dark tendrils, shot not towards the hidden soldiers, but directly at Kaido. The blast struck him with explosive force, sending him hurtling through the air. The ground erupted where he was hit, and a small burn mark appeared on his hand as he was thrown backward. The spell left a massive, smoking crater in the earth. Sierra peered over the edge, her voice filled with concern as she called out Kaido's name, asking if he was all right. From the bottom of the pit, Kaido's head and shoulders emerged from the dirt he was buried in. Sierra rushed to his side, asking if he was injured. He waved a hand dismissively, confirming that all his limbs were still attached. As he began to pull himself free, his gaze fell upon something stuck in the ground directly in front of him. A sword. He stared in shock at the hilt, which bore the unmistakable crest of the Felbach family. Sierra helped him to his feet. She explained that she had attacked because she sensed a murderous intent, one different from Adernus. A flicker of understanding crossed Kaido's face. He realized her seemingly random attack had saved him. I see. Thank you, he said, his gratitude mixing with the grim realization of the danger he had just avoided. He processed the shocking truth. His own family's private soldiers were sent for him? The question hung in the air, a chilling confirmation of his brother's betrayal. His daze was broken as he found himself looking up at Sierra, who was gently cradling his head. He called out her name in surprise, realizing she had been there all along. The initial shock quickly hardened into resolve. He understood that, one way or another, countermeasures were now necessary. As this thought solidified, the ground beneath them crumbled. Kaido was suddenly buried under a cascade of rock and debris, his face contorted with rage. He vowed to himself that he would not let this go unanswered. With a cry, Sierra unleashes a torrent of raw power. The ground erupts in a blinding explosion, obliterating the attackers in a wave of destructive energy. As the chaos subsides, Kaido catches his breath, a sigh of relief escaping him. Elsewhere, Helmet interrogates some of the captured assailants. He grimly notes to himself how many times this has happened, remarking that it has been 12 straight days of relentless attacks since the first wave. He turns to Kaido, confirming that his suspicions were correct. The attackers they captured 2 days prior had confessed something significant. Kaido's expression hardens with the realization. It wasn't just Argo being targeted. It was his own life they were after. Suddenly, Helmet spots a new threat on the horizon. An army, far larger than any previous attacking force, marches toward them under a banner Kaido recognizes with dread. He stares in disbelief, wondering if his fears are being realized. A man in formal armor, a messenger from Felbach, stands before them. Helmet realizes with fury that the recent attacks on Argo were merely a diversion. He snarls, accusing the messenger's faction of being behind the entire plot. Helmet lunges, shouting at the man, reminding him that they were once comrades who shared meals and questioning his lack of sentiment. Kaido holds him back, urging him to calm down and listen, pointing out that the man is simply a messenger. The messenger calmly unrolls a scroll and makes a formal proclamation. He declares that Lord Argo and his people are to be annihilated for conspiring with the elven race to commit treason. Kaido stares, utterly stunned, shouting out in disbelief at the charge of overthrowing the state. He attempts to reason with the inspector, insisting it is all a misunderstanding. Sierra cries out in agreement, but the inspector dismisses their pleas. He accuses Kaido of harboring elves, a race banished by the Empire, and plotting revenge for his own exile. Kaido tries to explain that the situation is different, but the inspector cuts him off, stating he is already aware of a long-standing feud. From the ridge above, a new voice mockingly calls out to elder brother Kaido. It is his younger brother, Cleo, clad in armor, who smirks and declares there is no misunderstanding. Kaido stares in shock at his sibling's arrival. He asks Cleo if he is the one leading this army. Touching a scar on his face, Cleo confirms that as a result of their last encounter, he has come to lead these forces. He clarifies with a sinister grin that while it isn't precisely his army, it is an imperial force, and that he has had his own share of troubles. His brother's expression darkens as he leans forward, tauntingly asking if Kaido failed to hear him. He reveals that this military campaign is a direct order from the Emperor himself. Kaido is left speechless. The revelation sends a shockwave through the group. The inspector gasps, realizing the gravity of an imperial decree. Cleo erupts in maniacal laughter, screaming that the highest authority in the land has sentenced them all to death. He promises to bury Kaido and his beloved Argo, declaring them enemies of the state and warning that a full-scale invasion is imminent. Night falls over the main estate of Argo, now surrounded and marked for destruction. Inside, one of the undead residents frantically finishes crafting a large white flag, a desperate symbol of surrender. He insists they must surrender to the Imperial army, but Helmet grabs him, shouting that surrender is futile. He reminds the man that the Imperial order was for annihilation, meaning the Emperor will accept no other outcome. Kaido listens, the grim reality setting in. The desperate resident then suggests they flee while they can, but Helmet explains that escape is impossible. The very fact that Kaido's brother revealed himself means that Argo is already completely surrounded. Kaido sits in stunned silence, defeated. Looking up at his worried people, he finally speaks, his voice heavy with guilt. "I'm sorry," he begins, "this is all my fault." His companions look on, their expressions a mixture of concern and resolve. He remains kneeling, his head bowed, but Liza Einhorn approaches. She gently takes his chin, lifting his face to meet her gaze. She tells him not to speak of blame. In a world like this, she explains, no one ever knows when or where they might earn someone's resentment and lose their life as a result. Helmet emphatically agrees, adding that he, Liza, and all the other residents of Argo ended up there precisely because they ran into that kind of unfortunate fate. The Archangel Sierra adds her voice to the chorus, assuring Kaido that no one among them is wasting time thinking about whose fault it is. One of the undead residents roars his agreement, shouting that even if this is all happening because Lord Kaido earned his brother's hatred, it is of no consequence to them. He proclaims that because Kaido is their lord, they all believe he will find a way to save them from this desperate situation. Kaido looks up, moved by their unwavering faith. He looks upon his allies, Sierra, Liza, Helmet, and the others. Adurna pledges the support of the elf tribe, and the rest murmur their assent. A small smile forms on Kaido's lips as he realizes he is not alone. Bolstered by their trust, his resolve hardens. He stands and announces it is time to assess the situation. They gather around a large table. Kaido explains that reconnaissance from the statue of Lady Yuri's confirms Argo is completely surrounded by an enemy force numbering approximately 13,000. He concludes the grim assessment of their own forces by stating the enemy consists of trained soldiers. Against such foes, they cannot hope to win even in one-on-one combat. He listened as Helmet reported their numbers. Their human combatants, including the leaders, totaled 59, supplemented by 88 elves. Kaido acknowledged internally that while it was a respectable force for a normal skirmish, it was far from enough for their current predicament. At that moment, the Angel of Creation, Yuri's, declared that the power of the two angels was the truly crucial element in this fight. Beside her, Sierra quietly affirmed her statement. She continued with a flourish, boasting of her own versatile creation magic and Sierra's powerful offensive spells. With a smug smile, Yuri's remarked that it was almost a shame how brilliant she was. Yuri's then turned her attention to Kaido, who was studying a map of the region. She proclaimed that with the two of them on their side, they could fight on more than equal footing, and asked for his assessment of how the battle would unfold. His eyes remained fixed on the map, where a single piece representing Argo was surrounded. He concluded that the enemy's first move would be an all-out invasion from every direction. It was the only strategy that made sense. He reasoned further that the Imperial Army could not retreat, and their vast numbers meant their provisions would not last long, forcing them into a short, decisive conflict. Therefore, their own strategy had to be a direct counter. As he spoke, the map piece representing Argo was suddenly enclosed within a miniature fortress. Kaido announced their plan with a single word, siege. He elaborated on the plan, requesting that Yuri's create a massive defensive wall around Argo, inside which all its people would shelter. While her wall held the enemy at bay, Sierra would strike them from afar. Yuri's accepted the task with confidence. Helmet expressed his relief, realizing their role would be much simpler, and apologized to the angels. Kaido affirmed this, explaining that their presence on the battlefield would only hinder Sierra's magic, so their forces would be dedicated to a support role. Sierra then asked when the battle would begin. He replied that while the timing was ultimately up to the enemy, he had a rough idea of when to expect their move. He turns to Yuri's, asking about their food situation. She assures him they have a farm and ample provisions, but when he presses specifically about meat, she admits their stock is limited. The news visibly troubles him. He realizes he must endure this limitation. Suddenly, Yuri's face drains of color as a horrifying realization strikes her. She cries out that it's impossible. Without meat, she cannot use her magic. Kaido stares, utterly shocked by her declaration. As he reels from this, Sierra calmly explains that an angel's power output can indeed change based on their physical condition, though she smugly adds that she, being perfect, is not affected by such things. Kaido can only stammer in disbelief at this catastrophic development. The truth crashes down on him. His entire strategy, a war of attrition built upon Yuri's magic, has just collapsed at its very foundation. His mind races. To keep Yuri's powered, they would need to give her all their meat, which would only last 5 days. It was nowhere near enough. Sending the angels to hunt through enemy lines was out of the question, a complete reversal of their purpose. As he despairs, Sierra quietly gets his attention. She presents a small, glowing, winged figurine, a new piece for their desperate game. She then addresses the stunned group, asking how they would feel if there were 3 angels. The question shocks Kaido and the others. Sierra explains that she has a counterpart, another angel who is her opposite. She continues, admitting that this third angel has personality problems, but possesses power that rivals her own. Helmet and the small creature are aghast at the thought of a third angel. Sierra concludes that if her own magic were to fail, they would have no choice but to summon this other being. With all the pieces now laid out, 3 angelic figures standing on the field of battle, Kaido considers the new possibilities. He looks to Sierra, asking if this new configuration will be enough. His decision is made. He slams his hand down, declaring their new strategy, a blitzkrieg. They will end this war on their own terms, before the meat runs out. He is carried swiftly through the air, the barren landscape rushing by far below. The one flying him, the angel Yuri's, offers a cheerful smile. Kaido thanks her for the transport, but she casually dismisses it, telling him not to worry. She soars through the sky, cradling him securely as they speed towards their destination. He reflects that a swift end to the war is the best possible outcome, then urges Yuri's to increase their speed. His urgency is clear as he shouts their destination aloud. The city of Dondina, where they must reach the third angel as quickly as possible. The scene flashes back to the strategic meeting, where Kaido had first inquired about this third angel, asking for her by name. Lady Nia? In response, Sierra had pointed to a location on the map, identifying the now-declined city of Dandina. She explained that Nia is known as the Angel of Destruction, and is likely sealed away, just as she and Yuri's once were. The image of a fearsome, shadowy figure with glowing eyes flashed through their minds. Despite the ominous description, Kaido immediately volunteered, stating he would go to Dandina with the item needed to awaken her. Sierra, her expression firm, declared that she would go as well, calling him a fool. She had grabbed onto him, insisting that she would not leave his side. She reminded him that he is the true cornerstone of their entire operation, and that she would accompany him. Kaido could only offer a quiet sound of resignation. The memory fades, returning to the present moment of their flight. A look of firm resolve settles on Kaido's face as his mind clicks into place. This is their new strategy. He laid out his strategy using small figurines on a map. He explained that while Lady Yuri's wall holds, Sierra will be dedicated to attacking the invading enemy forces, with the humans and elves providing support. He stressed that they must endure until he and Yuri's return with Nia, at which point they will have a three-angel system. His plan detailed that Lady Yuri's would focus her power on the defensive wall, while Sierra, now freed from that task, would take over the offensive role against the enemy that she had been handling before. This would allow him to operate as an independent friendly unit, with the sole objective of securing the enemy commander. He declared his confidence in the plan, stating that his familiarity with the Felbach command structure would allow him to quickly locate the enemy general's command post. If he could force the general to sound a retreat, the war would end. He estimated the enemy's preparations would be complete within a day, even accounting for the unfamiliar territory. Meanwhile, outside the strategic meeting, Helmet gazed up at the towering, sheer wall Yuri's had created. He let out a cry of awe, remarking that it was a magnificent defensive structure worthy of Lady Yuri's, and that any normal army might just turn back at the mere sight of it. His attention then shifted to where Liza was kindly offering a steaming bowl of food to the bound prisoners. He watched her, noting aloud how kind Lady Liza was to go out of her way for the captives. One of the prisoners, a bald man, began to eat from the bowl she held. In a sudden, brutal motion, Helmet struck the bald prisoner across the face. The man's head snapped back from the force of the blow, yet he quickly recovered, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips. The other elven prisoners reacted. One complained that he wanted Liza to feed him too, and the small cat-like creature agreed. Adurna, however, snapped at them, calling them fools and telling them to prepare for war instead of trying to befriend the enemy. Despite her harsh words, Adurna took a bite from the offered bowl. As she tasted it, a look of pure shock spread across her face. Inside the fortress, the small, cat-like creature looks towards Sierra, whose bowl is now scraped clean. It asks her if the meal was not to her liking. Before it can get an answer, a tremor runs through the room, rattling the empty bowl. Sierra rises to her feet, her expression suddenly grim. "They're here," she states. The creature looks up, confused. Her declaration is immediately followed by a series of thunderous impacts against the fortress's main gate. The heavy door shudders under the relentless assault from the outside. Beyond the walls, the source of the attack becomes clear. A massive, organized army advances across the land. Rank upon rank of soldiers march in lockstep, an overwhelming threat intent on breaching the defenses. Panic erupts among the city's undead residents. One clutches his head in terror, screaming that it's too soon, that not even a full day has passed since the last assault. In response, Sierra takes to the sky, her expression hardening with resolve. Seeing her ascend, Helmet rallies the people below, shouting that Lady Sierra has emerged and that they must follow her. She soars over the city's circular structure, a beacon of light against the sky, heading directly for the outer perimeter where the enemy forces are gathered. Her focus narrows, her eyes locking onto the invaders. She recognizes them instantly, Kaido's enemies. From his vantage point, Kaido, now clad in armor, stares in disbelief as a massive defensive wall materializes before the enemy lines, exclaiming that it seems to have grown out of the ground. He clenches his fist, a look of frustrated realization on his face. He mutters that Lord Felbach was right and that he, Kaido, still possessed such a hidden power. Meanwhile, the opposing commander, Lieutenant General Ralph Hubel, observes the new fortification. He remarks that it's best not to give them any more time, acknowledging that a magic user capable of erecting such walls is a grave threat to the Empire. The Lieutenant General considers the situation further, reasoning that the glory of defeating such a powerful foe will be proportionally great. Back on the wall, Kaido, his face bruised, formally addresses the general. He states that for this battle, his own forces, though meager, will lend their strength. He continued his proposal to the Imperial General, who listened with a stern expression. Lieutenant General Hubel declared that he understood the terms. If Kaido were to capture the territory's lord, he would be free to do with them as he pleased. A faint, unsettling smile crossed his face as he quietly offered his thanks for the general's cooperation. Meanwhile, Sierra watched from her position as the enemy forces began to assemble before her, their ranks swelling in number. Her resolve hardened as she recalled Kaido's instructions. It was time, she realized, to attack the target he had specified. She gazed down at the approaching soldiers, sensing something distinctly different about them compared to other humans she had encountered. With a cry, she decided to strike them down first, launching herself forward as a brilliant light began to gather around her. She unleashed her holy block, a massive wave of sacred energy that crashed into the Imperial line, engulfing the soldiers in its blinding light. Her eyes widened in sudden, shocked realization. Magic. From his vantage point, General Hubel erupted in thunderous laughter. He taunted the Argo mage, revealing that his own Imperial army possessed a magic core. It was foolish, he bellowed, for her to think that magic was her exclusive right. His soldiers, seemingly unharmed by her holy attack, stood firm. In unison, they raised their staff-like weapons and took aim at the stunned archangel. She, however, was far from defeated. Gathering her power once more, she unleashed a barrage of holy lightning, sending beams of pure energy streaking through the air. The brilliant bolts of light slammed into the massive wall, but only managed to leave faint scorch marks on its surface. From his vantage point, Kaido observed her efforts. Sierra, her body trembling slightly from the exertion, declared defiantly that while she stood guard, they would never break through the wall. She hovered in the air, a solitary angelic figure positioned as the last line of defense for the city behind her. Her defiance was met with mocking laughter from Lieutenant General Hubel. He boasted that his army was already in position to attack from all sides, then bellowed for the next wave. In response to his command, the Magic Corps unleashed another volley. With wide, determined eyes, Sierra vowed not to let them succeed, preparing to intercept the incoming assault. She found herself completely surrounded, dozens of magical projectiles curving through the air, all converging on her position. Hubel laughed triumphantly, declaring that she was his true target. Kaido watched, grimly realizing the general strategy. Sierra was an easy target because she couldn't move from her defensive post without exposing the wall. A massive explosion erupted in the distance. Seizing the opportunity, the general commanded his magic soldiers to continue their assault without pause. With the angel pinned down, he roared for them to destroy the wall. The relentless barrage struck her from all sides. Gritting her teeth against the impacts, she could only mutter in frustration at the overwhelming assault. On the battlefield, Lieutenant General Ralph Hubel extends his hand, a glowing sigil forming in his palm as he unleashes his skill. From a distance, Kaido watches the display of power, recognizing it as belonging to Hubel. His power manifests as a colossal, armored fist that slams into the city wall with devastating force, shaking the very foundations of a structure. The impact shatters the stone, sending fissures racing across the barrier. From her position, Sierra realizes with alarm that the wall is collapsing. A large section of the wall crumbles into a cloud of dust and rubble. Hubel observes the destruction, satisfied that the path for his army has been cleared. He roars at his soldiers to press the attack and annihilate the enemy. Following his command, the Imperial soldiers charge forward through the newly created breach. Sierra looks on, startled by the sudden turn of events. But as they advance, the ground beneath them gives way, opening into a massive, perfectly circular pit that swallows the charging soldiers. Sierra stares, bewildered. She realizes this is not the same power that broke the wall. This is magic, and on a scale that only one person she knows could achieve. From the sky above, a new figure descends, wreathed in light. It is the Angel of Destruction, Nia. Watching from afar, Kaido cries out her name in disbelief. He stares, stunned, as his small companion exclaims that a real battle has begun. Kaido clenches his teeth, frustrated and apologetic that this is happening right after Nia has just awakened. His companion notes that the battle is progressing faster than anticipated and suggests they stick to the plan, but Kaido seems to ignore the advice. Meanwhile, Sierra recognizes the newcomer. She muses that Nia, whose mind was just cleared, is a type who moves on pure emotion, a true battle junkie. True to Sierra's assessment, Nia raises her hands and begins to chant, unleashing her destruction magic, Destroy. A swirling vortex of dark, destructive energy forms, aimed at the battlefield below. She cackled with glee, her laughter mixing with the screams of Imperial soldiers as the very ground beneath them gave way, plunging them into a newly formed abyss. Amidst the chaos, Lieutenant General Hubel bellowed for his men to calm down and retreat. He ordered a subordinate to lead the withdrawal, declaring that he would remain as the rearguard. As he spoke, Nia descended, landing directly before him. The general stood firm, asking if she was the one responsible for the chasm. When Nia confirmed it with a dismissive smile, Hubel concluded that defeating this mage from Argo was the only way to secure a path forward. He challenged her to a one-on-one duel. She found the human's audacity amusing, musing at the impudence of someone challenging her, the great Nia, to a direct confrontation. In response, Hubel's body began to glow with power as he activated his skill, Iron Fist. From the retreating lines, a soldier identified Nia as their most powerful foe, realizing the general intended to defeat the mage himself. He roared for her to face him in a battle to the death. Nia, however, seemed to be toying with him, casually offering to play along. Unfazed, Hubel boasted that his iron fist was a skill capable of destroying anything, and that nothing had ever withstood its power. Her playful demeanor vanished in an instant. Nia's eyes widened in genuine surprise as she realized her opponent also possessed a skill. He gave her no time to process this revelation. Hubel lunged, his armored fist streaking across the ground like a meteor. He bellowed that he would destroy her and any magic she could conjure with his overwhelming power. The punch connected with shocking force. Nia was thrown back, her expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. She questioned how he could dare to destroy her, the angel of destruction. The sheer audacity of the act filled her with an incandescent rage. The battle reaches its climax as Lieutenant General Ralph Hubel staggers, blood spilling from his mouth. The angel of destruction, Nia, lands a decisive blow, her form a blur of motion. With her opponent defeated, she triumphantly declares her victory. On the battlefield, Hubel's soldiers watch in disbelief. One of them, his face obscured by a metal helmet, voices their shock, questioning how their lieutenant general could have possibly been defeated. The sentiment ripples through the ranks. In response to the turn of events, Kaido, kneeling from exhaustion, gives the order to retreat. The chaos continues as another soldier is struck down nearby. From a command post, Kaido's younger brother, Cleo, receives the grim news. His face contorted with panic. He relays the message, shouting that Lieutenant General Hubel has been taken down and ordering all forces to withdraw immediately. As the battle concludes, two hands clasp. One rests in the other, a soft, intricate sigil glowing upon its palm, symbolizing a bond and the end of the conflict. Back in the safety of the settlement, Sierra is embraced by a tearful Liza. The young girl cries out Sierra's name, overjoyed that she is unharmed. Helmet stands nearby with another resident, explaining to Sierra that they were so worried they almost had to stop her from rushing out to the battlefield herself. She gently pats Liza's head, a comforting gesture. Sierra reflects internally that she still has much to learn if her actions cause such distress to those she cares for. The young girl continues to weep with relief, calling out Sierra's name. Sierra looks at her with a gentle expression, thanking her for her concern. Having witnessed the tender reunion, Helmet turns his attention to Kaido. He asks if the battle outside is truly over. Kaido, though visibly weary, gives a firm nod and confirms that it is. He clenches his fist, a look of triumph on his face as he declares the battle over. It is Argo's victory. Below, his people erupt in cheers. The celebration is unrestrained, with Helmet and the others leaping for joy at their hard-won success. Amidst the revelry, Nia, the angel of destruction, lets out a booming laugh. She exclaims that it had been a while since she'd been able to cut loose, and that it was quite fun, her powerful presence leaving Helmet and the others speechless. Watching her, Liza Einhorn realizes that this must be the third angel. The small cat-like creature beside her cries out Nia's name in awe. With her hands clasped and a blush on her cheeks, Liza murmurs about how magnificent and gallant Nia looks, a sentiment that seems to startle her small companion. The creature is aghast, questioning if any angel will do for Liza. It then shouts with conviction that, of course, Sierra is number one. Just then, Adurna the elf appears, calling out to Kaido. She proudly declares that she has done exactly as instructed, gesturing to the group of elves she has brought back safely. His attention shifts to the leader of the group, and he addresses him formally as Lord Samuel. Samuel returns a warm smile, telling him not to worry. He clasps Kaido's hand firmly, assuring him that he will not hesitate to offer his aid to an ally in crisis, and asks what needs to be done. Kaido expresses his gratitude for their timely arrival. He explains that remnants of the enemy forces may still be lurking nearby, and asks for the elves' assistance in dealing with them. Samuel understands immediately, confirming that they are to hunt down and eliminate these stragglers. He stood before the captured lieutenant general, who was tightly bound. Kaido voiced his lingering concern to King Samuel, noting that while they had the general, the sheer number of enemy soldiers still posed a significant threat. Samuel, smiling confidently, told Kaido not to worry and to feel free to use the elven soldiers, who were eager for a fight and would be a great help. The elven king added that he and his warriors would remain in Argo for some time, and that Kaido should not hesitate to call on them if any trouble arose. His soldiers responded with a resounding cry of agreement. As the new alliance was solidified, the captured Lieutenant General Hubel could only grit his teeth in silent frustration. He had been incited, used as a pawn in a scheme that had ultimately failed. The source of that scheme, Kaido's younger brother Cleo, sat bound on the ground nearby. He looked up at Kaido, his voice laced with venom as he lamented that even after all this, he still couldn't manage to kill his hated older brother. Kaido looked down at his brother, his expression hardening as he uttered his name. He then demanded to know why Cleo held such animosity towards him, why he was so fixated on being his enemy. Cleo scoffed, retorting that it was common for a younger son to resent the heir, and that historically, this was often the case. He declared that Kaido was, quite simply, a thorn in his side. Hearing this, Helmet stepped forward, his patience worn thin. He bluntly told Kaido that it was time to be decisive, suggesting they should just kill Cleo. He argued that even if he was Kaido's brother, his actions had long since crossed the line. But Kaido refused without hesitation, stating plainly that he would not kill Cleo. Helmet pressed him, asking why, speculating if it was because of the bonds of blood. Kaido clarified that Cleo was already the lord of a region, and his own citizens were surely waiting for his return, just like the people of Argo. He reasoned that if Cleo's domain were to fall into ruin because of his absence, he would feel he had failed those people. Therefore, Kaido concluded Cleo must live and return to his territory. Helmet considered this, admitting he couldn't even imagine what Cleo's territory was like. Kaido explained that his brother's unique skill brings the blessing of water to his land, and because of it, his domain has surely become a prosperous place. He looks down at his defeated younger brother, explaining calmly that Cleo is useful, which is why their father acknowledges him. A smug expression crosses Cleo's face. He recalls his last report to their father, boasting that his domain was praised and that he, unlike Kaido with his failure skill, is truly useful. His confidence gives way to indignation as he confronts Kaido, demanding to know why Kaido is also acknowledged by their father. To Cleo, this feels like an admission that Kaido is the superior lord. Tears of frustration well in Cleo's eyes. He lost the battle, and now he realizes Kaido's way of thinking is beyond his own. But he resolves that it is not over yet. A glowing symbol, a swirling crest of water, manifests before him. Fueled by this resolve, Cleo shouts that his skill is the one thing he has not lost to Kaido. He declares that he will use this power to make his own domain greater than anything Kaido could manage, and begins to gather energy. Kaido looks on, shocked by the sudden outburst. Suddenly, a translucent wall of light erupts from the ground, encircling Cleo and cutting off his power. He stares in disbelief, wondering what the barrier is. From a distance, Sierra stands with her hand outstretched, identifying the spell as a holy block. Kaido feels the surge of magic and instantly recognizes its source, calling out Sierra's name. Beside him, Helmet asks if he really intends to just let Cleo return home. The barrier solidifies, and Sierra appears before the trapped Cleo, a halo glowing above her head. She calmly states that she will be the one to send him away. Cleo stares, stunned, recognizing her as the woman from before and realizing with shock that she must be a mage. Her wings spread wide as she reveals her true nature. She explains that she was revived by Kaido's alarm clock and declares that she is an archangel of Argo. With a final, terrified cry, Cleo is lifted into the air, encased in the sphere of holy light. The sphere shoots into the sky, teleporting him away as Kaido watches, utterly stunned by the revelation and the sudden display of power. The aftermath of the recent conflict is starkly visible. The town, recently constructed by Sierra, is now marred by massive, dark craters that bore deep into the earth. High above, Nia, the angel of destruction, observes the scene with a pout of annoyance, muttering to herself that this is all a bother. She materializes a massive sphere of destructive energy, demanding to know what Sierra thinks she's doing. Sierra retorts that Nia is the one at fault for rampaging. From the ground, Kaido watches in stunned silence. Sierra calmly tells Nia that she should at least fill in the hole she made, but Nia scoffs, remarking that even after hundreds of years, Sierra hasn't changed a bit. With a gleeful expression, the Angel of Destruction declares it a game, a house destruction game. She announces that she gets 10 points if her attack hits one of the houses created by Sierra. As the destructive sphere is launched, Sierra's eyes narrow. A memory surfaces, and she recalls Nia's inherently chaotic and childish nature. The two angels confront each other midair. Sierra demands that Nia not destroy her city. Nia mockingly counters, offering to destroy everything and remake it as her city. Below, Helmet remarks that for two people fighting, they seem to get along quite well. The bald, undead man dryly agrees, noting they just seem like people who have a bad relationship. Seeing the escalating conflict, Kaido cups his hands around his mouth and shouts for them to calm down, announcing that even the captured enemy soldiers are helping to rebuild the houses. The residents, however, correct his assumption. Helmet clarifies that they aren't doing it for him. They are repaying their debt to Liza for her kindness. Another resident chimes in, declaring they won't hand Liza over to a newcomer, as the small cat-like creature agrees. The bald undead man looks on silently. The sphere of destruction hurtles towards the ground, aimed directly at the bald undead man, who can only look up in terror. It slams into the earth just beside him, narrowly missing. The intense heat washes over the terrified man. Watching from a distance, Kaido realizes with a start that Nia intentionally missed. He understands that while his own presence is meaningless to her, she deliberately avoided harming a person. He is suddenly drenched as Nia's energy strikes the ground, not with destructive force, but with a burst of steaming water. As the hot liquid splashes over him, he shouts in astonishment, realizing it's a hot spring. Sierra, beside him, can only look on in confusion. Nia herself appears perplexed by the outcome. She remarks that it's strange, as the water source she created shouldn't have been in a position to be affected by geothermal heat, and she trails off, considering the possibility. Putting her confusion aside, she makes a decision. With a decisive gesture, she offers the newly formed spring to him, stating that if this is the result, then she would be grateful if he made use of it. In an instant, a complete open-air bath materializes, perfectly formed with stone basins and an accompanying bathhouse, transforming the landscape. The structure is immaculate, a traditional-style bathhouse standing ready beside the steaming, inviting water. Moments later, Kaido sinks into the warm water, a deep sigh of relief escaping him as the heat soaks into his body. He thinks about how wonderful it feels. His body, which had been unable to move after being suspended in the sky by Lady Yuri's for nearly a day, is finally being gently soothed and loosened by the warmth. A small, satisfied smile crosses his face as he realizes he's the very first one to enjoy this new bath, feeling as though he's claimed a small prize. His thoughts then drift to his younger brother. He considers that, in a way, this unexpected luxury is thanks to Cleo. He turns to Sierra, who has joined him in the water, and remarks on the bath's impressive size. He asks her if this is a custom from her city, explaining that in the Empire, people didn't have the habit of bathing outdoors. He found himself soaking in the hot spring with several others, his relaxation shattered by the sight of the Elven King. He called out in surprise to Lord Samuel, who casually explained that this was an open-air bath, a custom where men and women typically bathe separately. Kaido, flustered, stammered that he believed a private bath had been prepared for Lady Yuri's. As Kaido processed this, Helmet suddenly realized the impropriety of their situation, questioning Samuel if it was truly acceptable for them to be bathing alongside their king. Samuel, however, waved off the concern, stating that there was something far more essential missing from the experience. Suddenly, on the other side of the partition, Kaido was flung through the air, landing with a splash in the women's section of the bath, much to the shock of Aderna and Liza, who were also soaking in the water. From the steam emerged Nia, the angel of destruction. With a playful blush, she called Kaido a bold man for daring to enter the women's bath to join them. As she spoke, Aderna could only shout his name in disbelief. His mind raced in panic. He was in the women's bath with Aderna and Liza. He was certain he had checked the signs at the entrance. The realization sent a jolt of pure confusion and terror through him. Back in the men's bath, Samuel declared that the essential missing element was a classic hot spring happening. He noted how lively the women's side had become and proudly confessed that he had tampered with the signs himself. Beside him, Helmet noticed that Kaido was gone. Overwhelmed, Kaido tried to apologize and retreat, insisting it was a mistake. But Aderna grabbed him, shouting at Nia and Yuri's about how he had ruined her relaxation. Kaido could only stare, utterly lost. Meanwhile, Sierra sighed in contentment, remarking how good the water felt on her stiff shoulders. Nia found this amusing, noting that even Sierra's modest form could experience such tension. Sierra then turned to Kaido, acknowledging his terrible predicament and asking if he felt the same way. Aderna tried to continue her tirade, but Nia cut her off, dismissing the topic for later. Her tone then shifted, becoming menacing as she leaned in and asked Aderna if she truly believed she could escape from her. As Samuel and Helmet laughed from the men's side, Kaido was suddenly launched back, hitting a magical barrier and tumbling into the water. He braced for impact, but felt nothing. He realized with a shock that despite being thrown by Nia, the wall of magic hadn't hurt him at all. He looks up from the water, still reeling from the bizarre encounter, to see Sierra sitting on a rock above him. With a tilt of her head, she asks what he is doing. In response, Kaido presses his hands together in a frantic apology. He explains that he must have entered the wrong bath by mistake and begs Sierra to fly him over to the men's side. She simply stares, taking in his plea. Sierra agrees, but adds that she has something to discuss with him first. She then asks if he would mind getting dressed before they talk. Kaido is taken aback, surprised that she wants to have a serious conversation now. Moments later, both are clothed. Kaido stands awkwardly, stammering slightly as Sierra remains silent, her expression unreadable. He breaks the silence, asking if she is angry with him. He points out that she has been wearing a somber look on her face for some time now. Sierra quietly wonders if it's because she acted on her own accord. Before she can elaborate, Kaido erupts, shouting that what she did was not selfish in the slightest. He continues passionately, insisting that she is always helping him. He reminds her that just moments ago, she used her magic to protect him, his voice filled with earnest gratitude. His fervor subsides, and he admits that Sierra was right. He had been thinking about his brother, Cleo, and now he understands his feelings. Kaido's thoughts drift to his own past, the anger and sorrow of his exile, the feeling of being utterly unwanted. He realizes with sudden clarity that if he hadn't met Sierra back then, he might have become just like Cleo. The memory of her hand reaching for his as he fell through the darkness flashes through his mind. The weight of this revelation, that she had saved him from a fate of bitterness, leaves him wide-eyed with profound understanding. He stands with Sierra on the rocky outcrop, their hands clasped together as a quiet moment passes between them, breaking the silence. He turns to her, asking why she chose to cooperate with him when they had only just met. Sierra pauses, her expression unreadable as she considers his question. She finally speaks, explaining that 20% of her decision was simply because she thought it seemed interesting. The remaining 80%, however, had a different reason. Her voice softens as she reveals the primary motivation. It was because he, Kaido, was the one who had awakened her. She recalls the darkness she was in and how Kaido, her benefactor, led her out of it. In that moment, she had decided she wanted to follow him, a choice she was glad to have made. Because of that decision, she found herself surrounded by new faces, realizing that she had gained a family. Bringing her focus back to him, she offers a sincere thank you to Kaido for being her alarm clock, for waking her up. Their hands remain intertwined. He gazes at her, his expression softening with a profound sense of connection and gratitude. He looks at her with deep appreciation, telling her that because of the skill she possessed, he was able to. Before he can finish, she looks at him with a radiant smile, declaring that right now, she is